for a while. But, we're back. We're happy to be back here at PAX East. Thank you so much for joining us, Warriors of Light, here at Boston. Give yourself... Yeah. Also, we have lots of Warriors of Light watching.
And we are live.
World, so welcome to the stream. Hope you guys enjoy it.
This is mostly for posterity,
really
but I totally did not know this was happening until
we have some special guests.
A couple minutes ago.
Maybe seen him walking the hallways or poking his head around the curtain and kind of ruining the surprise, but my name is Matt Hilton. I'm the Senior Director of Community for Final Fantasy XIV. I'm very excited to be hosting this panel. I'm also extremely nervous. It's been many years since I've done a panel, so please bear with me.
I remember he did a panel with him a while ago.
Thank you. I'm glad somebody believes in me. All right, well, without further ado, we have a fun panel to get to. So please, if you would, help me welcome to the stage the producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV, Mr. Naoki Yoshida.
Hey V, hey Ray, good to see you, glad to have you. Woo! Yoshida! I literally was in bed 20 minutes ago, so forgive me if I'm a little flustered as I get all this together.
Hi guys!
Ryan, Raven, good to see you, glad to have you. Hey, there's the man of the hour and the day.
Producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV. よろしくお願いします。
Oh.
And if you could also help me welcome to the stage, translating today for Yoshida, please help me welcome Aimi Tokotake.
Hey, Aimi! Who doesn't love Aimi? She's such a good translator. Daniel, good to see you, glad to have you. Man, I wish I didn't sleep in. It's mostly I'm in a bit of a depressive state right now.
マスクなのが残念ではあるけど、2018年の多分ラスベガスのファンフェス以来ですか、北米のこうやってプレイヤーコミュニティの皆さんと直接お会いするの。
It's a little unfortunate we have to hide our face under a mask, but I mean, I think it's been since FanFest 2018 was the last time we came to North America to talk to the fans directly.
いや、めちゃくちゃ嬉しいです。皆さんにお会いできてありがとうございます。
We're so excited. We're so happy to see everybody here.
No worries, Daniel. It happens with me. It happens in phases. I'll be good. Thank you, though. I appreciate the well wishes.
All right. Well, so as you may know from the screen that says the PAX East 2023 Q&A, this is going to be a Q&A panel. We gathered questions ahead of time on our forum.
This is why you go to the forums and you ask questions.
Some exciting news coming up in the future. We felt like maybe it makes sense to look back at the past instead of looking to the future and not being able to answer any questions about the future until certain events.
Let me know if that's better, Ray Ray.
So, while we did get a lot of very passionate, detailed, long paragraphs, 2 to 3 pages questions, we had to choose some that really kind of focused on, the journey, the unending journey of Final Fantasy XIV, fun play on words. So yeah, let's just jump into it. Alrighty?
A little bit more.
まあでもちょっと
Light being good to glad to have you.
ちょうど今年8月が来れば、ファイナルファンタジー14がレルムリボン申請してからちょうど10年。
Hey, Lumby, we're adjusting it.
本当に世界中のプレイヤーの皆さんにね、北米のプレイヤーの皆さんももちろんそうですが、支えていただいていよいよね、10周年というところを迎えられたのは本当に皆さんのおかげだと思ってます。まずはね、それをぜひありがとうと言わせてください。
Before we jump into the question, though, August of this year is going to be exactly 10 years since we relaunched as Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn, and we're so grateful for the support for the title around the world. Of course, you fans in the North America region as well, and I think we couldn't have gotten this far without the support of all the players out there. So we just wanted to take our time to say thank you to all of our players.
Laura, good to see you, glad to have you.
さあ、これね、そういえば今日僕らちょうどプーマとコラボレーションしているので、みんなプーマで来てます。
Oh yes, and of course we forgot to mention the outfits that we're wearing. We're doing a collaboration with Puma. So yes, we have their apparel and footwear.
Yeah, we had to show off the footwear. I mean, we're
okay, thanks, Columbi.
All right, I'm sure we'll talk about Puma a little bit
Infinite,
later,
Cheetah,
though,
good
too.
to see you. Glad to have you.
All right, let's jump on into it. All right, our first question. Which expansion or story arc did the developers like most over these 10 years?
Ooh,
No pressure. Choose your favorite child.
Yeah.
I mean,
まま
It's
ず
common.
気に入ってるっていう意味だとやっぱりちゃんと全部気に入って作ってるんでまずは全部大好きですよ。
So
Yeah,
I don't
he
think
loves
we
all
can
of them.
pick like a one favorite. Like we're making the titles as we go, and we love them all. So first of all, yeah, all of them are our favorites.
まあそれぞれに思い出はあるんですけどやっぱ特に印象に残ってるのは1本目の拡張であるヘブンズワードかな。
But that said, of course there are fond memories for each of our expansion packs. But I think the one that sticks to my mind the most is our first expansion, Heaven's Word.
yeah. I mean, that makes sense though, right? Because like it's the first time that they get to do it.
とにかくレルムリボンを厳しいスケジュールでまあなんとかその申請することができて
Yeah, very strict schedule
最初の
because
エクス
coming
パ
out
ン
of
ション
Realm
を
Reborn.
出すまではまだ全然ゴールじゃないんだとやっぱり MMO っていうのは拡張を出してこそ初めてこう認めてもらえるところがあるから一気にこう走っていくぞっていう合言葉にまあ作ってきた拡張でした。
And with A Realm Reborn, we were under a very strict schedule to get the game relaunched. And so we never thought that releasing A Realm Reborn was our ultimate goal. I think we were
Yeah.
looking at
It's about
our
the
first
long-term life of the
expansion
MMO.
as our sort of goal to keep going beyond the release. And so we kept that momentum going. All of us were encouraging each other that we need to just keep going. And I think that's why it stuck out.
ただ、まあ、やっぱり初めてだったっていうこともあってペース配分が全くつかめなくてまあ、リリースもともとね春だって言ってたら
Hey
なんかね
Tracy!
初夏になっ
Hey
てしまった
Trevor!
り
Good
も
to
し
glad to
た
have
ん
you.
ですけどものすごいタイトスケジュールで作ったこともあって本当開発チーム全員僕も含めて倒れるんじゃないかっていうぐらいの状態だったので。まあ、あれがあってこそのやっぱりストーンブラッドだったりその後シャドーブリンガーズだったりエンドウォーカーだったりいろんな拡張につながっていってるのでやっぱり一番印象には残ってます。
But that said,
Different
it was
challenges
our
and
first
strengths.
expansion, so it was rather difficult to pace ourselves. And again, it was such a tight schedule that we wanted to follow, and so we were going so hard. Like I was worried we would like collapse along the way. But of course, because we had our first expansion and we had that foundation, we were able to connect it to the future expansions, including Stormblood, Shadowbringers, Endwalker, and we were able to connect it to our subsequent expansions. So it definitely is memorable in that way as well.
ただ一個だけストーリーで
Making them all interconnected is one of their
若干
biggest
心残り
strengths.
があって
Like genuinely,
パッチ 3.3 の
makes also all their content always end up being
光の
worth
戦士と
playing
アルフィノが竜の目をこう
and
ね
available,
足の
I
上からこ
guess.
うポイって捨てるやつ
But there's one thing I felt that story-wise, there was something that I feel that I wasn't able to accomplish to the fullest extent, which is during patch 3.3, you remember when Alphino and Warrior of Light took Nidhogg's eyes and just tossed it down the abyss?
世界中のプレイヤーからね「おい捨てんのかよ!」っていうツッコミを受けたのでもうちょっとうまくやらないと
You all do this!
思ってます。
And I remember getting feedback from around the world saying, "Oh my gosh, are you just tossing it away? You're just throwing it away?" So maybe there might have been a better way to handle that.
This was a good idea at the time, I guess, you know. All right, let's move
It was
on
a
to next.
near bottomless chasm. Who was expecting
Yoshi-P, as
anyone
you
to come
played
up?
through FF14 or read the
Guarded by
scripts, what
vicious
part of the story
winds.
moved you to tears and why?
これも絞るのは難しいのでちょっといくつか挙げますけど、まあ、いろんなシーンあるんですけどそうだなシャドーブリンガーズで
I agree, Infinite, but my perspective on his answer was I love all my children equally, but I can appreciate that the first child had a profound change on me and impact on me, right? In terms of like a shift in life. So I feel like that was kind of like the mood of
カメラが
the
横切っ
answer.
た時にこうアルバートたちのこう姿に変わるっていう演出があるんですけど あそこはかなり今見てもきます。
Again, really good question and very difficult to narrow it down. So I have a few that comes to mind. One of them was, of course, in Shadowbringers, after you've defeated the last boss, when the Crystal Exarch returns to the Crystal Tower, and the camera kind of pans from the pillar, and then you see Ardbert there, just changing that cinematic presentation that we had for that scene still makes me kind of tear up.
まあ、シャドーブリンガーズはこうプレイヤーの皆さん光の戦士の物語でもありつつアルバートの物語でもあったのであそこをうまくこうなんだろう彼らの
Oh yeah, warning, expect spoilers. Probably not for Endwalker, probably, but typically they'll talk about old expansions in QAs like this, or assuming people have played it. Okay, not all of you thought that about the eyes, but many of you. I remember even when we went back through it in the MSQ. Some of you guys had the exact same comments.
And with Shadowbringers, of course, Warrior of Light or Warrior of Darkness, we follow his story, but it's also kind of Ardbert's story as well. And so you see Ardbert trying to save the realm of the First and all the self-sacrifices that he and his comrades went through, and seeing that final scene and almost getting that sort of redemption feeling. They were able to fulfill what they were set to do. It was just so moving that even as a player, when I played through it, man, I couldn't help but cry.
あとは
Still moves me to
これ
this
行
day.
月エンドウォーカーですけどウリエンジェがムーンブリダーのご両親と再会するところかな。
The next one is from Endwalker, when, of course, Urianger goes to Old Chalrian and finds Moonbrida's parents.
そこはまあもともとウリエンジェっていうキャラクターはちなみにQ14 オリジナルからやってるって人どれぐらいいる？
Oh, can we see, by the way, a raise of hands, those who have been playing since 1.0, like the former Final Fantasy 14.
He always asks this. I'm always
結構いてくれ
curious
てる。ありがとう
over
ございます
time,
So much.
like the
There's quite a
evolution
few
of
of
it.
you.
まあ実はウリエンジェってキャラクターはその第7零祭というストーリーを作っていくためにただひたすらに怪しいキャラクターを出そうって言って出したキャラだったんですねQ14 で。
He's not wrong.
So Urianger started out when we were trying to depict and think about the lore behind the calamity. He was just this shady dude.
だからウリエンジェって話が長い何言ってるかよくわからない感情に乏しいっていう。
Hard
And so
words.
this Urianger fellow was, of course, he would be very verbose. You don't really understand what he's saying. Yeah, and so yeah.
でもウリエンジェって僕ら開発チームと同じようにずっといろんなこう旅を光の戦士の皆さんと一緒にしてきて、人の心っていうのをより深く理解したりこう人にものを伝えるべくこう言葉はたくさん知ってたんでしょうけどその使い方をさらにこう一つね大きく学んだりっていうした僕らと一緒に成長してきたようなキャラクターだったので
Basically a text in
ま
the
あああいうシーンをねウリエンジェのために作れたっていうところはすごいなんだろう開発者として嬉しかったしあのシーンを特に何度も僕がこだわってチェックしてリテイクをしてたんでもうその度に泣いてました。
And of course, with Urianger, it was difficult to read him in terms of emotions as well. But throughout the journey with the Warrior of Light, and us too, actually, we're watching him also kind of develop emotions and trying to choose the correct words to say whenever there's a situation. And of course, I'm sure he has a lot of knowledge, like intellectual knowledge about words, but he was able to learn to choose his words to convey his feelings, and I feel like we were able to show a lot of character development throughout that storyline. And so that scene where he gets to meet Moonbrida's parents again, just as a developer, it was so heartwarming to be able to depict a scene for Urianger like that. And Yoshida himself was very, very particular about that scene. So he would try to tweak it many times, but each time he would review, gosh, he would get teary every time he had to review.
あと1個あげるんだったら、まあこれもエンドウォーカーですけど、エルピスのシナリオが終わって、まあ戻ってくるときに、
Just the acceptance of him and the
ベーネスの
acceptance of
歩
their
み
daughter
の
for being
カットシ
exactly
ーン
who she
かな
was. Just, ugh.
And then also the one more scene that pops to mind is also from Endwalker, but right after you finish the arc while you're in Elpis, and then when you return, and then you see that sort of path of Vana.
まああそこはなんだろう、ちょっと皆さんとは
Major spoilers for
受け取り方
Endwalker
がちょ
ahead,
っと違うかもしれないですけど、
so
自分自身
definitely if you're worried
914
about
から
spoilers,
担当
maybe
する
take a
ことに
pause
な
for
っ
now.
て、まあ一歩一歩いろんなことがありつつこう歩いてきてようやくここまで来たなっていうやっぱり感想はあるんで、なんとなくベーネスのこう歩んでる姿になんとなくね自分たちが重なるような気もするんで、あのシーンもダメですね。
We shall walk.
And I'm sure everybody had their own sort of interpretation when Vana goes through that. I believe it's the scene where she's walking when she's like really muddy and then she's walking through and very gritty. And for the developers who worked on the original Final Fantasy XIV, they had their memories of the steps that they had to take to get through the rebirth and relaunch of the game. And so we kind of overlapped and then looked at Vana in. It was as if we were seeing through her
Hey, Daryl,
eyes
good
as
to glad to
well.
have you.
あんまり喋ってると泣いちゃうから次行こう。
But yeah, if
such an
Yoshida
interesting
keeps
lens. It
talking,
makes so
he's gonna
much
start
sense.
crying. So let's move on.
Next!
I love how emotional Yoshida is. Like, I love that he's
All
a
right,
guy
this
who
is a more
cries.
fun one. What is your favorite location or zone, or one that's left an impression on you over the past 10 years?
これは何年経っても、エオルゼアスタートの3都市がやっぱり一番お気に入りです。
Favorite location? It's got to be the 3 starting city-states of Eorzea.
なんでかっていうと、僕はプロデューサー兼ディレクターで、エクスパンションもそうだしパッチもたくさん作ってるんですけど、3都市のやっぱりエーテライトのそばにいると、やっぱベテランの光の選手の皆さんがねこう走ってこうパッチの日だとこうみんな一斉にログインしてきて一斉にいろんなところへこう走っていったり、若葉マークをつけてこうキョロキョロしてる人たちがいたりとか。
There's
やっ
no
ぱり
question. The way he
すご
talks
く
about the
こ
story is
う
like the way we'll
この
talk
世
about
界
the
を作
story,
ってきて
right?
よかったなと思
He
え
clearly
る
loves
場
it just
所
as
なの
much as we
で、
do.
この3都市はいつも自分のキャラ座らせてたりします。
You don't know how to
So
talk
the
about
reason
those
why
moments in that movie
is,
unless
as
you
producer and
care about
director,
it.
developing the different expansion packs as well as the patch releases, you'd see the different types of players. He would just have his characters sit at one of the Aetherites in the 3 city-states, and you would see, like, if it's a patch release date, all of your veteran players are logging in all at the same time, rushing to get whatever content they want to get done very quickly, or you see some sprouts looking around like, oh, everything is so new. But it makes us really grateful, and it's just it's so worthwhile to see people enjoying the world that the developers had created. And so yeah, Yoshida just leaves his character there by the Aetherite, just kind of watch people.
だいたい会社にいて仕事中もログインしてるときは3都市でだいたい皆さんをこうチラチラ見てたりします。
He would have a PC on in the background as he worked, and he would have his character logged in and sitting by the Aetherite.
なのであれですね、昼間から日本時間の昼間から3都市でいつもあんまり動いてないキャラいた僕かもしれないです。
So if you happen to see a character that's not really moving and it's in one of the city states, 3 starting city states, it might be Yoshida.
I think that Limsa Laminsa has left an impression on a lot of us. Yeah, I agree.
リムサ結構印象的ですかね。
え？
リムサ結構印象的ですかね。
いやリムサはね人が多いんで
But Limsa Laminsa is so crowded all the time.
あえていっぱいいるなと思ったらね他行くようにしてます。
If it's too many people, Yoshida tends to want to go to another city-state. Sorry.
Maybe
Definitely
safer that
happy,
way.
but my
Okay.
impression is it does. Everything I've
let's
seen
go
so
on to
far,
the
both
next
in
one.
it and from them talking about it, makes me feel
What was
that
the
way.
most difficult decision to make
see.
regarding expansion development after A Realm Reborn's launch?
これは毎回の拡張に言えることですけど、どうやってこう皆さんに驚いてもらうか、サプライズをどう作るかっていうところは
Yeah, he
毎
said that a
回
lot, that that's a
そ
valuable
の
thing to him.
難しいですね。
The
So
balance
this
between
applies
surprise
to any
and
expansion actually,
reliability.
but it's always a challenge to bring about like a surprising element for our players. Like how do we deliver a new kind of surprise with each of our expansion?
まあ、例えばヘブンズワードだとまあ粒子戦争、竜と人のこう歴史が分かると思いつつ、なんかこう最終ステージ行くとね、まあ、大陸が出てきたりとか。
For example, in Heaven's Word, you would have this Dragon Song War, this millennial battle between humans and dragons. But then after you've kind of accomplished all that, you realize there's another conflict with the floating continent of Azizla.
まあ、ストーンブラッドだとアラミゴを助けに行くのかなと思ってたらいきなりこう東方にも行ったりとか。
Right,
And
it
then
doesn't
in
climax at the
Stormblood,
end.
you would think, oh, we're headed to Alamigo, but then you realize, no, we're going even further east.
まあ、シャドーブリンガーズだとね、光の戦士ではなく
He said that
闇
a
の
lot
戦士になっ
in
て、
interviews.
しかも第一世界に行くっていう驚きだったり。
And then in Shadowbringers, you've been fighting as the warrior of light, but you're suddenly now hailed as the warrior of darkness. And then you have this brand new realm of the first.
まあエンドウォーカーであればね、月が最終目的地かなと思いきや、おいどこまで行くんだみたいな、まあそういったサプライズがやっぱりゲームというかエンターテインメント、ストーリーとしては必要だと思ってるので、まあそれをやっぱりゲーム体験としてどう作っていくかっていうところはすごく難しい。まあ判断というよりもやっぱり作るのがまず難しいですかね。
And of course, with Endwalker, we thought that the moon was going to be our final destination, but we went even further to the outer limits of the universe.
the first
and
trial?
So that kind of surprise element, I believe, is quite a challenge with each expansion, and in that sort of sense of entertainment and the gameplay experience that we bring with each expansion is definitely difficult. It might not be like a difficult decision to make, but it was always a challenge.
To nail, yeah, definitely.
7.0 もうね、あーってなってるだから。
I know we're anticipating
For
for
7.0, he's
a
like-
7.0 release, and I'm sure we're going to have moments where we're just going to go, ah!
No pressure, no pressure.
Only got a year left, it's fine.
All right.
Yeah, Tracy.
All right, next question. Looking forward to the 10th anniversary, have any events or developments been particularly memorable or surprising in these 10 years?
これはちょっと何回かお話ししてると思うんですけど、やっぱり一番は2014年の初めてファンフェスティバルをやったラ
Yeah,
スベガ
I'm
ス
not
のファンフェ
surprised.
スがやっぱり一番僕にとっては
I've watched
印象に
footage of
残
that.
ってます。
So you might have heard this story before, but I believe this was 2014 when we first did our fan festival series, and it was like the very, very first in Las Vegas.
でちなみにそのファンフェス行った人います？
By the way, I know it's a West Coast event, but like, was anybody there at that first fan festival in 2014 Las Vegas?
It's the hand.
いる。あ、
Nice.
Dude.
ありがとう。
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
いやー、あの時はですね、前日のレジストレーションのラインがですね、レジストレーションのなんか機械
Yep.
故障してすごい
Yep.
長蛇の列になったんですよ。あの時は本当すいませんでした。
So at that time, we had some technical difficulties with the registration equipment. And so I remember there was like a very long wait or like a long line that was forming. So apologies for the inconvenience
10
that was
years ago.
caused.
Still
ただ
apologizing
そ
for that.
のまああまりにも待機列が長くなってるので、吉田さんちょっと謝りに出てほしいですって当時のね PR チームに言われて、で外出たんですけど、ものすごい拍手と歓声をもらって、ちょっと本当にびっくりしたのが記憶に残ってます。
And so we were worried because the lines were so long, registration was not moving along. So our PR manager decided, Yoshida-san, would you mind coming out and just apologize, apologizing, yeah, just greeting our guests that are waiting in line. And so I went out, he went outside, and he was welcomed by applause and cheers. It was just so incredible. He was blown away by the warm welcome.
で翌日のその最初のファンフェスの基調講演でステージに上がった時もものすごい拍手と歓声で、自分がこうゲームを作ってきてそれが、まあ、こんなにもたくさんの人に喜んでもらえてるんだっていうのをものすごく感じさせてもらったので。
You finished the first third of Endwalker, and you feel like I played an expansion that you're just getting
So
started.
the next day was when we did the FanFest keynote stage, and so when I stepped up and got to the stage, then again was the applause and cheers. It was so encouraging, and so it really sunk in that this game that we were making had reached so many people and had made many people happy. So that was very memorable for me.
ちなみにあまりにもすごい歓声で緊張しちゃって足が震えてひどかったんですよ。
By the way, it was such a nervous experience. Like everybody was so excited and they were cheering and it was just so much enthusiasm that I got nervous and so my knees started shaking and I was up there on stage trembling.
しかも90分の予定だったのにあまりにもね緊張して焦って早口で喋ったら60分で終わっちゃって。
And I was allocated 90 minutes to do the keynotes. And I was so nervous, and so I spoke so fast that my 90-minute program became 60 minutes.
Yeah, we had to kind of adjust on the fly for that one.
That's never happened before or since.
やっと後ろでこうタバコ吸いながら
On
パッて
repeat.
SNS 見たら短い
5 questions? That'll take 6 hours.
And once the stage was over, and I went to go take a smoke break, and I was double checking what people were saying on social, and I was like, oh no, everybody's saying it's too short, too short, too short.
でも本当に皆さんの声援にはね本当感謝してます。ありがとうございます。
But again, we're so appreciative of everybody's enthusiasm and just your cheers and your applause was very much appreciated. Thank you.
ありがとうございます。Thank you.
Yeah, Tracy, there's a reason that he's won a lot of support, both in the content
All
they
right, I'm going to
produce
read this
over
as it
time
was
and
submitted,
consistency
but
of
then
it,
we'll
and the
maybe
attitude.
flip it around. So what would Naoki Yoshida from 10 years ago say to the current Naoki Yoshida?
え
一旦提出された状態で読みましたけれども、おかしかったら
ちょっと待ってちょっと待って。
逆にしても。
10年前の自分が今の俺に言う。
Wait. So me from 10 years ago is supposed to say something to me
That
now?
だって10年前の自分10年後生きてないかもしれないじゃんだって。
But who would know that I would still be alive 10 years later?
だって10年前ってQ14 のアップデートしながら申請作ってた頃だから10年続けるつもりではいたけど14俺の寿命は10年持たないなと思ってたもんだってあの時。
But like 10 years ago, we were just so frantic to reboot Final Fantasy XIV from its original state. And so, I mean, of course, we had the intent to keep going for at least 10 years. But I mean, at that time, I was like, will I even live this next 10 years?
まあ今僕今年50歳なんですけど、まあ、60歳になった時に、まだ生きてるんだとしたらちゃんとスノーボード今も60歳でも滑れてますかって聞いてみたいかな。
And
He looks
but yeah,
good for
that
his
aside,
age.
if I were to say something for the 10 years in the future, I mean, like to the Naoki
He's
Yoshida 10 years
60.
into the future. So right now, I'm about 50 years old now. So what I would want to say to the 60-year-old me, or ask him, are you still healthy? Are you still enjoying snowboarding sometimes?
He loves his snowboarding.
まあもちろんね、14は続けてると思います
It keeps coming
の
up
で、
lately.
これからもよろしくお願いします。
I think 14,
I'm
Final
surprised we
Fantasy
haven't gotten a
14
gold
will
saucer at
still
this point.
keep on going. So yeah, your support would be appreciated.
FF14's got at least another 10 years left in it.
All right. Do you have a favorite memory of FF14 from a gameplay perspective?
いや一番、まあたくさんあるんですけど、やっぱりこう僕のプライベートキャラって当然ですけど中身が吉田だっていうのはバレてないので、いろんなプレイヤーと一緒にこうレイド行ってやっぱりこう霊式とかクリアできた時っていうのは、まあ毎回思い出には残りますよね。
Favorite, like one favorite memory? That's kind of difficult. So, I mean, there's many that I can choose from, but let's see. My private character, of course, nobody knows that I'm actually Yoshida playing while I'm using my private character. So I get the opportunity to play with various different people. And so we would go on different raids. Sometimes we might take on the challenge of doing a savage raid. And it's really exciting to be able to get through some of those challenging content.
やっぱり最近こう自分あまりにもめちゃくちゃ忙しいので、そのなんていうの固定を組むみたいなのもちょっとできてないので、最近はもうとにかく空いた時間にパーティー募集で行くので、本当にランダムにいろんな人とこう挑戦するんですけど、やっぱりいろんなエピソードがあるんでめちゃくちゃ面白いですね。
And recently I've been very busy, so I don't have like a static that I go into with different raids. So I would just literally go to Party Finder and group up with people. So it's very random, the people I meet, but there's so many different like happenings and episodes that I encounter when I go through different content.
まああれですね、霊式とかで黒魔同士ですげえところに黒魔門出してずっと粘った挙句攻撃食らって死んでたやつがいたら吉田かもしれないです。
If you're in some savage content and you see a black mage and you see them place their ley lines in a very weird place and refuse to move from those ley lines, that might be Yoshida.
Yeah, bring snowboarding to Kurthus. Yeah, I mean, like, you can totally imagine, like...
思い出の中身を話すとバレるんで、このぐらいにしといてください。
But I think I'm
Can you
going
imagine
to
that
keep
being a
from
gate?
talking about too much about my private character because you might find out.
Yeah, no more hints.
Next!
What are some elements from the Final Fantasy series that you haven't been able to include that you'd like to get to in the next 10 years? Please say Damaska. We need more of Matsuno's Ivalice arc.
I mean, we do need to have it be more home... We need, like, Volnane and stuff. We do need to be
まあ
holistic.
これから発
but...
売するね、当然16もね、何かできたらなと思いますし、そういう意味だとファイナルファンタジー2とか、それからファイナルファンタジー9とかはぜひね。
Well, I mean, Final Fantasy 16 is coming out soon. It would be nice to kind of look into. Final Fantasy 2 is a great game too, as is 9.
2 and 9. Interesting.
あとはあれですね、ファイナルファンタジー7リメイクシリーズがしっかり全部リリースできて、7リメイクチームが開発落ち着いたら7とも何かやらせてもらいたいなとは思ってます。
And also, I know we are going to be releasing another installment in the Final Fantasy VII Remake series, and I'm hoping that once they have been able to release all of what they need to do, and the team has had a chance to kind of slow down and take it a little bit more easy, I would love the opportunity there as well.
まあもちろんね、イバリースもそうだし、ね、マナディールもあるからね。
And then, of course, as this person mentions, we have the Ivalice realm, but then also we have the Vanadil realm.
Next!
All right. Since Dad of Light released on Netflix, has
Don't
there been a
read too much into that. You can read into that, but don't read too
Warriors
much
of
into it.
Light,
He likes
ages
trolling.
50 to 70, as well as players sharing stories with you about their parents joining them on their adventures. This was actually submitted by someone who said that they wanted to bring their mother here to PAX.
質問者の方は親御さんと一緒にパックスに来たいって
来てる
イエーイいらっしゃってる
Don't cry.
泣かないで
いや 実際その光のお父さんが配信されてからっていうのももちろんあって、こう親子で14をプレイしてます、またプレイを始めましたっていうケースは本当に世界中からご報告いただくようになりました。
Yeah, of course, with the Dad of Light being streamed on Netflix is definitely an opportunity. But also, even before then, I've heard of stories about how, oh, I'm playing Final Fantasy XIV with my parents, or my mom or dad got interested in playing with me.
あと
God, I
は
wish my
そ
parents liked playing video games.
の今もねちょっとマスク
It'd be
し
such
て
a
ま
great
すけ
bonding
ど、
tool.
そのこのコロナ禍の
I'm the
中
only one in my
で、
family who really likes playing video games.
なかなかこうリアルで遠くに住んでる家族とか、兄弟とか会えないっていう状態が続いている時に、エオルゼアの中でコミュニケーションを取ることによってなんとかコロナを乗り切りましたとか、いろんなその逆にコロナだったからこそゲームの中、エオルゼアの中でこう絆を深められましたって言ってくださるお手紙とかも本当に今回たくさんいただいたので、開発チーム一同で本当に作っててよかったなと思ってた
We cannot all
エ
be
ピソ
so
ードたく
lucky.
さんありますね今。
And of course, right now, of course, we're reminded because we're wearing masks, but with the whole COVID situation, I'm sure there were a lot of families that weren't able to gather in person. So they utilized Eorzean to kind of meet up and communicate with each other. And I know of people who had mentioned
that's
that
great, V.
they were able to communicate with their family and friends in Eorzean. And so that's what got them over like the stresses of the pandemic, and
It's hard for me to imagine
certain
the other way around.
people kind of strengthened their bonds, or they became closer because they were able to communicate even with the pandemic. And there are various reports and letters that we received from players, and so the development team, when they receive it, they're really happy and very grateful for all those people who share their stories. And we're just so thankful, and we're very humbled that people have had such wonderful experiences.
質問くださった方はお母さんと
Games
娘さ
heal.
ん
Games bring people
っていう
together.
ことなんですけど、
Brought us together.
同じようにというか、その非課線2人でプレーをしてたんですけど、子供が生まれて小さな光の戦士が増えましたっていうご報告もねたくさんいただいてるんで、ネクストジェネレーションもしっかり育ってってるなと思ってます。
And of course, the person who sent in the question is here with her mom, and it's a daughter-mom combo. But also, in the same way, we have warriors of light who are couples, and they have children. And there are reports of like, oh, we now have a little warrior of light in our household, and so we're so excited. Like we're getting the next generation.
Yeah, that was what I was laughing at.
All right, here we go. Will you do a Final Fantasy XIV, Final Fantasy XVI crossover?
Yeah, and Daniel, to your question, like people of all ages and all walks of life play 14. You'd be surprised, even in our community.
僕は、ファイナルファンタジー14のプロデューサー兼ディレクターなので、
Willow.
So
Good to see,
I
glad to have
am
you.
the producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV.
もちろんやれるんだったらやりたいなとは思ってます。
And of course, if there was the opportunity, if there were the opportunity, I would love to. I would love to.
ただほら一人では決められないので、
But I can't decide just all on my own.
ファイナルファンタジー16のプロデューサーにやってもいいですかってやらせてもらえませんかってまず聞かないとダメだと。
So that means I will have to go to the producer of Final Fantasy XVI and ask him, may I please?
なんか噂によると、そのファイナルファンタジー16のプロデューサーもパックスに来てるみたいなので。
But I've heard rumors that
Nice.
the producer of Final Fantasy XVI is going to be at PAX too.
Aubrey, good to see, glad to have you. Kiku, good to see, glad to have him. Yeah,
ちょっと
he is
聞いてみ
such
ま
a
す。
good troll.
So if I see him later, I will definitely ask.
OK, next.
We'll cross our fingers for that one. So, which Final Fantasy titles are your personal favorites?
As far as I know, 3.
Choose wisely,
Tactics.
because
I mean, like based on the
まず
prior
は
comments,
ファイナルファ
but
ンタジ
maybe.
ー3ですね。
First and foremost, Final Fantasy III.
まあ、なぜか
Makes
と
sense
い
for
う
his
と
age too.、
まあ、ファイナルファンタジーシリーズの初期の頃に、まあ、バトルシステムもジョブシステムもある意味 FF というもののこうシステムが最初に完成した1本目っていうのがファイナルファンタジー3だっていうふうに感じてる。
Yeah, I'm definitely experiencing that with Neri right now
and
as we play
so the
through it.
reason why is that as a Final Fantasy series title, I feel that with Final Fantasy III, this is the Japanese Final Fantasy III, not the North American release, which is sorry.
Yeah.
That's sorry.
The whole
I'm
thing.
inserting my personal thing, but no. So the battle system, the job system, anything that we recognize now as elements of Final Fantasy, I believe was first kind of finalized
Definitely.
in that Final Fantasy III, and it
Definitely
was
crystallized
finally
there.
like complete.
あとは3が初代ファイナルファンタジー14のプロデューサー、まあ、11のプロデューサー、
So
初代プロデューサー
so
でも
much
田
of
中
3 is
宏
in
光さん
14,
の
and
作
even
品なの
more
で
than I even ever thought.
宏光さんに尊敬の意味も込めて14の中に3のこうオマージュ要素が多いのはその辺がやっぱり強く出てるかなとは思います。
And of course, with Final Fantasy III, our first or initial director of Final Fantasy XIV, and of course Final Fantasy XI, Mr. Hiromichi Tanaka was the director for
Producer.
those titles, or producer. I'm sorry, producer for that title. And so I respect him a lot. So that's why you may see a lot of homage paid to Final Fantasy III within the Final Fantasy XIV as well.
あともう一本はやっぱり7がそうですね。
And then another Final Fantasy series title would be Final Fantasy VII is definitely a favorite.
やっぱ7もその2回目の FF の完成形かなと。グラフィックスクオリティ、
Yeah.
それからストーリー、ゲームのボリューム、
Yeah.
まあミニゲームがたくさんっていうところもそうだし、
Definitely was
本当に、
like a
MMORPG かのような
step forward, it's a change, a slight
とてつもない
rebirth.
パワーを感じるゲームだったので、まあ、7は3の次はやっぱり7が改めて FF がまた完成したタイミングだったかなと思ってるんで、まあ、やっぱ上げるとしたら僕は3と7ですね。
And with Final Fantasy VII, it was another moment I felt that it was a complete sort of package of Final Fantasy, where the graphics quality was dramatically changed, the play volume or like the amount of gameplay that you
Content.
get from the game was a lot more, and then we have various mini games, and so it almost felt like an MMORPG, and it just had that sort of power and strength in that game. So yeah, I think my personal
Which is
favorites
a
would be
huge shift
definitely
from the
3,
first
and then
6.
7 would be when Final
And definitely you
Fantasy
can see that
had
in 14.
sort of completed its sort of it came as like
Geiger, good to see, glad to have you. Also, it's interesting to talk about like age and
if you were
development, right?
releasing FF14 for the first time into the MMO market now in 2023, what would that game be like?
Jesus, that would be such a. There's so many facets to that. That's kind of a terrible question.
now, like literally now.
いやわかんないな。 F2P として一回ゲームデザインは考えるんじゃないかな。でも
Yeah.
Not sure. Like if we're doing it in the modern market now, we might need to like look at how would game design work.
Reevaluate.
Would it be free to play and then develop the game in that kind of design?
ただやっぱ FF である以上は
I love that he goes straight into
絶対に
designer
こう今
mode. Like he
14でやって
doesn't.
るよう
Like
に
he's like
テレビドラ
actually
マシリー
interrogating
ズ
the
のように
question.
こうストーリーが続いていき、プレイヤーの皆さんは光の戦士であり、やっぱ世界を救う冒険を
I think it's a
その
good
物語を
question. I think it's just a bad
その手
forum
で
for
プレ
the
イするっていう
question,
ところ多分
Tracy.
変わんないと思いますこれは。
Because I feel like he
That
would
said,
does have
of course,
thoughts
being
about it.
a Final Fantasy title, like we would want to deliver like story and drama like you would maybe like a TV series, or we'd have to have our Warrior of Light, which is the player, and then it would be a narrative about
Yeah.
saving the world.
あとは
Hey, see, I think that's
Probably
just
field
saying that
PK
out
ない
apropos of
と思うんだよ
nothing
ね。
is kind of
I
bullshit because I
don't
think
think
that
I would
ignores the
allow
power that he
for
has on the
PK
board,
on
or also the
field.
capacity for other people to do that. Also, the new CEO is not in and of himself alone just an indicator that they're going to go down the NFT path. I feel like that's just kind of like that may happen and be
いや
wary,
あん
but
まり
like
変わん
to
ない
assume
ん
that
じゃな
that's
い
just
か
what's going to happen is
もしかして
kind of
I mean,
lazy
if we
criticism.
look at it that way, it might not really change much.
わかんないな。真剣に考えたことはないな。
Yeah, I wouldn't be so sure. Like, I've never really gave it too much of a thought.
だって今 F2P って言うとさ、なんか14プレイヤーみんなはあって言いそうじゃないだって。
Like, say if we release a game or like this game as free to play now, like I think players would question it. Like they'd be like, "What?"
Yeah.
そんな気がするから難しいよね。
Yeah.
質問
So it is a tough question.
だってハウジングアイテムが一個一個あれでしょ
It could happen. I don't mean to say that it couldn't, but I think to assume that it would is
The game might
unfair
be free to
to
play, but
the
then
track
you
record
have
of the
to
people
pay
involved,
for
you know?
each housing furnishing to put on your estate. Like I don't think anybody would like that,
めっちゃみんな首振ってるもん
right? You guys are shaking your heads. No.
Yeah.
It's like the whole audience was
Yeah.
like shaking their head. It was really weird.
まあ今ぐらいの形が一番いいのかなとは思ってますね。
So yeah, I think we have it just right now.
Well, but the new CEO, the interim prez, we don't know much about.
Since the release of
they just-
Endwalker,
the
we've seen
C-
the
they just
dev
lost
team
their-
discuss
the
more
CEO just stepped
frequently
down.
about the 10-year
The
future
interim
of
hasn't done
FF14.
anything yet.
What future project are you personally most excited about?
Most excited
Most excited.
まあやっぱりこれは今そのアーティストたちとエンジニアたちがものすごい力をかけて開発している第一次グラフィックスアップデートは
And he's a little dicey, but we don't know for
ぜひ
sure
期待
which way he's
してほしいし僕
gonna
自身
go.
も期待をしてます。
I think I would like to
And he's also
mention
the interim.
our artists and engineers are really working hard to get this to happen with our first
Old.
graphics update. That's something we're really looking forward to and very excited about.
ちょうどこの PAX に出てくる前に、ファンフェス前の
Yeah, what I would point,
One
one point I would say,
point
so the thing is that there's a difference though talking about Square as a whole versus talking about the individual business units because they act differently. Like Luminous, right, constantly had problems, but Business 3 has had pretty much win after win. So I think like looking at each studio matters, while also you can look at the branching
And
over
of course,
like.
we are currently working hard at it. So right before I left for PAX, we were doing like this midway review right before FanFest. And of course, with the graphics update, we want to strive to deliver better looking graphics, of course. But I think there are elements that we're working on that is part of that update that's not just the sort of immediate like aesthetical aspects of it. So we're really excited about what we can deliver for this.
I'm so excited for that.
When will we see the new Flame General, Pippin Tarapin, in action and learn more about him? We adventured with him while in Stormblood, and he's filling Raban's place in Ulda. I want to see him grow as a character too.
I mean, I'm here for this
Wow.
question, but also that's
There's a lot
so
of Pippin
specific.
fans.
ピピンのファンが結構いますね。
いますね。ピピンはですね、ラウバーンってすごくこう激高するかなんだろう、叫んでるか戦ってるかみたいな人じゃないですか。
So with Raoban, first of all,
I'm so
you
good
would-
to see you, glad to
you
have you.
typically see him very angry and like very emotional and always shouting or always fighting, right?
ただよく考えてみると、サカツ州と
Yeah, that's
して
fair, AC.
政治をやっていかなきゃいけないわけです
I'm with you
よ
on that.
本来。
But also he needs to look at the government of Ulda as well.
なのでピピンは今ナナモ陛下を支えて一生懸命そのウルダ派っていう国を、まあ、よりその高いレベルの国にしてかつ世界中がこう一つにまとまっていくための、まあ、多分政治的な動きをすごく一生懸命ねもらった剣はね背中に刺したまま
That's why they spend the
政
time
治
they
に
do
今頑
in
張ってるん
things
じゃ
like
ないかなって気がしま
4.1.
す。
But on the other hand, Pippin is more strategic, I guess, in trying to oversee the government within Ulda. So I think he's working alongside the Sultana to see and make sure that the land is more the government is functioning correctly, and as the world is kind of coming together, he would need to oversee like those elements as well. So he would have the sword that was given
Right.
to him, of course, sheathed in his back, but he would also be looking at the
Persona,
political side of things as well.
ただまあ光の戦士がまた何かしらのピンチになった時には
I love a
きっと
one-handed
真っ
sword
先
for
にね
Oban is a
その
great
剣を
sword for
抜いて
Pippin. So good.
ソーナを抜いてね駆けつけてくれるんじゃないかなと
He even-
思ってますので
That's a,
でもなんか楽しみにしてください
He
って言う
knows
とさ
Tisona's name.
なん
I
か
know that
光
seems
の
like
戦
such a
士
small
ピンチに
thing,
なるの
but
かって
like,
話になっちゃうし難しいね
I mean, of course he
And
should, but the
I'm
fact that he
sure
does.
Pippin
is-
really wants to support the Warrior of Light, so whenever the Warrior of Light comes into some kind of pinch or like some kind of tight spot, I'm sure he'll take his Tizona and come to the rescue or try to at least help the Warrior of Light. But if I say, well, look forward to an episode like that, I worry that people will start to assume, oh no, what's going to happen to the Warrior of Light now?
Makes sense.
Calling you guys
It
out,
has
Des.
been 10 years since they are released, and I still want to know more about the Heart of Savage.
Yes!
Please say yes.
Please!
これはですね 100% 全てとは言わないですけど間もなくこのサビクのエピソードが語られますので、まあ、何とは言わないですけどこれはもう楽しみにしててください
We might not delve 100% into it, but we do anticipate having some like narrative that involves discussion of the Heart of Sabek. I'm not going to say what in particular, but just look forward to it.
Near future
I'm gonna go with
Near
Pandemonium
future.
Part
Yeah.
3.
Okay.
Yeah, Pandemonium, it's
All
Part
right,
3. I
maybe-
bet you it's,
maybe
I'm gonna
we'll
bet
stop
money it's
getting this
Pandemonium
question
Part
on
3.
the forums. So that'll be nice.
Laura. I'm going with Pandemonium Part 3.
I think this is
definitely-
our final question. No, oh, maybe. Yeah, final question. What is your personal aim for Final Fantasy XIV for the next 10 years, whether in gameplay, story, or as an MMO in general?
That's hard.
そうで
Honestly,
すね個人的な
Uh,
目標か
Personal goal, right?
まあやっぱ14はそうは言ってもライフワークではあるけどやっぱ仕事でありビジネスではあるからあんまり個人的な目標っていう感じではないですかね。
I mean, I do mention that Final Fantasy XIV is my life's work, but at the same time, it is, well, work and it is a business. So it might not tie necessarily into like my personal.
例えばですけど、今ファイナルファンタジー14をまだその十分に展開できてない国にやっぱり物理サーバーを立ててよりいいレーテンシーで遊んでもらいたいとか対応できてない言語にやっぱり対応していきたいとか
For example, with Final Fantasy XIV, I know there are certain regions that don't have like full support. So, for example, like setting up a physical data center so that we don't have to worry too much about latency trying to connect to
I know
like,
South American.
somewhere that's too far
desperately
away,
desired.
or there are certain languages that are not supported. So it would be nice if we could start working on looking into some of those.
あと例えば対応プラットフォームを増やしたいと
Dude,
か
if they did like Spanish, man, that'd be such a
Otherwise,
freaking...
platforms. There's still certain platforms that we don't have the game on.
あとまあこれは結構
Get it on
大変ですけ
the
ど
Xbox.
全てのワールドをこう一つの世界につなげてこう誰とでもパーティーを組めてみたいなことは考えたりはしますね。
And then another thing would be, and this would be quite an undertaking, but trying to connect all the different like regions so that no matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to sync up and party up with other players.
ただやっぱりここまでその
Purple, good to glad to have you.
10年以上にわたってこう結局こう一つ一つ1パッチ1パッチ1システムこう積み上げてここまでやってきたので、まあ、それは変わらずにこれからもコツコツエンドウォーカーで1回目の物語の、終焉というのは迎えましたけどまた大きな驚きのある
There's been a lot of future proofing and a lot of
一
like
個ずつこう積み上げていく
fixing of old
の
systems
が
and like
やっぱり
streamlining for Endwalker
遠いようで
patch
一番
content.
の近道
Maybe
か
even
なと
people
は
like,
思
you
い
know,
ます
duty support, right?
That said, we've been running the game for over 10 years at this point, but each time it's one step forward. You know, with each system, it would be a little incremental improvement that we make, or the different elements that we're kind of building up upon one another. And so with Endwalker, of course, narrative-wise, we've kind of reached a sort of conclusion, but we still want to deliver surprising and exciting story. And I think just continuing to build on that, it seems like a long way to go, but I think that might actually be the closest way to get there.
あとそれなりに近い 7.x ぐらいではハウジングアイテムの設置数を増やすっていうね目標もありますし。
And something in the can I say near future on this? We're thinking 7.x series. We would love to look into increasing the number of furnishings you can place in your estate.
7.x, guys, so it's a while away.
今頑張ってますんで。
We're working on
Yeah,
But
Purple, but there's so much
It'll be
text.
a
The amount that it would take
bit
to
of a wait,
localize
but-
it has been the prohibitive
まあ
cost.
でも
I
今
think
の
prohibiting
も
them
そうですけどやっぱ
time
り
and cost.
一つ一つの積み重
But yeah, it is
ね
very
がね
interesting.
ファイナルファンタジー14をここまで大きく
Dutberry, good to
して
go to
く
have
れ
you.
たと思ってます。
But yeah, I mean, even now, everything is just building upon the different blocks that we're laying down, and that's how Final Fantasy XIV has gotten as big as it has. So I think we just want to keep going.
でもだからこそ皆さんともこうやって少しずつねその一歩一歩の積み重ねによって信頼関係っていうのを結べてきたと思ってます。
But also, I think we are building upon the things that we have put into the game, but then we love the communication that we have with our players. And I think you guys are a big part of the steps that we're taking to put more things into the game. And I feel like this communication has built up a trust between the developers and the players.
まあなので
It
今
has.
目
He's
標
not
を
wrong.
1個思いついた。10年後もここの PAX East で皆さんまたお会いしましょう。
Oh, and that kind of gave me an idea for my personal goal. 10 years from now, I would love to be back at PAX East and be able to see you guys again.
Remember, he said this earlier too, that he sees 14 as his life's work. He's in it for a
Okay,
long
well,
haul with
that
us.
concludes our Q&A, but we did mention we would talk about Puma one more time. We do have something fun for you, so if we can bring those house lights down, you know. Oh, fancy.
God, this trailer. Okay, who else is with me that this is deeply cursed?
I think my goal is to have those Estinian legs to, someday have that physique,
Warrior of Drip.
But yeah, as we mentioned,
That was the new
Final
Puma
Fantasy
gear,
14
Raven.
and Puma collab we've teamed up to create a special collaboration of footwear, apparel,
release date tomorrow.
accessories. You may have seen we have an area near the entrance to the show floor that actually has some of the different outfits on the different
I
mannequins.
kind of
So
do want
we
the
also
black
have some
jacket.
standees there, so you can take your picture with our three
Everything else is
heroes
very
here.
meh. I'm
Make sure you
not
do.
about it.
You can compare your legs
guess the
to
backpack is
Estinians
actually
whenever
kinda
you
nice.
want. And of course, as it mentions here, the collection actually releases on March 25th, so tomorrow. So keep an eye out. So what time tomorrow is keep an eye on the website and make sure you guys get your, is it drip they call it? Drip? Get your drip. Thank you, drip. Okay, got it. Make sure you get that. And but yeah, we're really excited for you guys to check it out, and we hope you guys enjoy it. And one more thing, if you have been following the Square Enix social channels, you may have seen we are doing giveaways and sweepstakes that you can sign up for to win some prizes, including some autographed stuff from Yoshida-san. So make sure you enter that.
I mean,
The
they already
secret
do
panel
Infinite.
word is Torgal, so make sure you. Okay,
I don't know, Ichigo.
You got it.
I
You
don't
got
know.
it. So make sure you use that for more entries on the sweepstakes. And let's have Yoshida-san, one final, if you could say one final comment.
メのコメントお願いします。
I'm surprised. I thought they said
まあ
Koji
冒
was
頭
at
にも
East.
言いましたが、いよいよ新生今年で10周年を迎えます。改めて、ファイナルファンタジー14ここまで来れたのは本当に、世界中でねプレーをしてくださってる光の戦士の皆さんのおかげです。本当にありがとうございます。
So I mentioned this
Yeah,
at the
okay, you'll
beginning
be there
as
for the
well,
16 panel.
but A Realm
Interesting.
Reborn is going to be celebrating its 10th anniversary this year, and Final Fantasy XIV was not able to get this far without everybody's support. And so, again, we want to thank all the
all you
Warriors of
guys.
Light out there. Thank you so much.
またこれからもね、さっき約束した通り、10年後のパックスでお会いできるように頑張っていきますので、どうぞこれからもよろしくお願いします。
But yeah, we're going to continue to work hard,
No.
and I've made a
It's
promise
usually,
with you guys.
like,
10
very
years
specific
later,
niche
we'll
lore
be back
questions,
at
Samuel,
PAX.
don't
We
get
want to be
answered.
back at PAX
Especially
East
from,
and see you guys again. So your support would be
I
very
mean,
much
it's not
appreciated.
super niche if it's
Thank
comic strips. If
you.
you want, I
Thank
can try to
you.
answer it here, but not it's the same. But a lot of times you're going to get like Koji or one of the other lore people are more likely to have that question get answered rather than
あ、ごめん。
Yoshi-P.
最後にもう一個。
Oh, sorry, one more thing.
明日ファイナルファンタジー16のプロデューサーがなんかステージあるらしいんで、よろしければ応援してあげてください。
Oh yes, I forgot to mention. Tomorrow there will be a panel session with the producer of Final Fantasy 16. So if you have the time, please.
よろしくお願いし
The
ます
Pippin。question's not a
We'll
niche
see you
lore
there.
question, though. The
Thank
Pippin
you,
question
everybody.
is a
Thank you
question
so
about
much.
whether or not they're going to use a character in the story and have more of them, right? That's very different than talking about, like, the specific of a one job quest and, like, the, you know, the like, metaphysics or something like that. Man, that 16 producer seems like a busy guy. Yeah, definitely. Because the thing is, Yoshi-P will answer definitely lore, or they answer questions about characters or things like that, and sometimes even lore questions. But typically, whenever he's he's asked questions, they don't get a ton of questions that are hard lore core questions, or when they're allowed to choose from a list, it's not one of the ones they focus on. But yeah, okay. Hey guys. That was a lovely little thing, very heartwarming. Also, if you're either new or just aren't used to watching Yoshi-P and seeing kind of like the genuine love for the game he has, it's a really good thing. It's really good. Don't forget that we also have the live letter coming up very, very soon, which we're gonna do. Gap closers and FF. I mean, we have them, so I'm not sure I understand. I can't wait for the 14-16 collab event, and there's two Yoshis sitting at the table. Oh my god, if it was like the minstrel, oh my god, if it's the Wandering Minstrel meets like, I don't know, whatever the Wandering Minstrel for 16 is, that'd be hilarious. Is Deadpool doing okay? Yeah, he's doing fine. I can go get the boy. Give me a second. Come on, buddy. 1, 2, 3, off. Yeah, anytime, Daryl. It's good to see you. Now I have a cursed idea of Drip Elio. You can thank the panel and Koji. Hey, if it's available in game, I'll definitely take a screenshot. Hi. You wave it to people. They chose questions based on forward-looking aspects since that was the theme. Yeah, definitely. Hi. There you go. Okay. Any final thoughts or questions? Friendly reminder: we stream every Monday and Tuesday for the MSQ. We're streaming Final Fantasy 3 right now. If you've forgotten, Yoshi-P just mentioned that 2 and 9 were inspirations or ones that they want to pull from, which maybe is hinting towards 7.0. In which case, I would recommend watching our 2 playthrough or going to go play 2 or 9 yourself. But I'm very fascinated as to what he means by that. Beyond that, though, yeah. Definitely check out new videos every Wednesday. However, next week, we're probably going to be holding out our video not on Wednesday, but on Saturday for next week because it's April Fool's, and I have an April Fool's video I want to go out. Hope the producer of 16 meets with Yoshida tomorrow to talk about the collab. Yeah, I mean, if they could meet on stage and ask each other some questions, it would, or ask permissions, it would be very, very good. Deadpool looks so fluffy like a coyote. Yeah, he's very fluffy, and he does kind of look a little bit like one. A little shorter, though, obviously, stockier because he's kind of like, looks a little bit like a corgi, but he's a Swedish Valhun. What is 9? Final Fantasy 9? I'm considering playing 9. I definitely would, Kacker. 9's really good. 9's also a really big... It's basically... 9 is what if they made a modern... I mean, a 3D era game that was inspired more by the, 1 to 6 era. Especially, like, the 3 to 6 era. What if 16's an April Fool's joke? Then the amount of effort put into it itself is pretty amazing. Decoy, good to glad to have you. Pretty happy with the QA? Yeah, I mean, like, look, the QA was a little bit of fluff for the most part, but that's to be expected. Like, that's kind of like the vibe they were going for. It was more about it being a celebration and looking forward, and it was good. It was good info, Hobby Boss, good to see, glad to have you. Thanks, buddy. I was ready 77 Dutch while watching. Follow now. Awesome. Yeah, you have a good one too, man. Corgi Coyote. Yeah, you're not wrong. And then in the end of the stream, they merged together. They just do the fusion dance from Dragon Ball Z. Every time Yoshida goes to the bathroom, the producer of 16 is looking. Oh, that's going to be a meme for a while, isn't it? But yeah, a friendly reminder that Oh, frick-a-frack. Yoshi-P also said that his favorites were 3 and 7, which if you pay attention to interviews, like Ishikawa has mentioned that, like, similar things about 3, right? And you think about his age and developers for work on 14 and how a lot of them were on the teams in some way for developing things like 10, 11, and beyond. So because of that, because of their, age and experience, the ones that are going to call to them are probably the ones they played when they were younger and inspired them, less likely to be the ones that they are themselves worked on or had any hand in. So it's not surprising that older ones right now are, seeing, there's such a fundamental experiential baseline. I mean, look at the job system in 3, the aspects of 3 like Crystal Tower and also kind of its plotting, and then also, the soft single-player MMO elements of 7 and how those definitely affected 14 and its design and its in how it works. So it's gonna be interesting over the next 10 years as more and more people who grew up with later Final Fantasy games, and that's part of what defines them, are part of the creative team. Please go, if you go to Boston, make us a tea party. Yes, we'll go to PAX next year, and then we'll be a Boston tea party. Yeah. Don't mind me as like the Puma shoes. I've been needing to replace my super old shoes. Hey, if it's looking good. But I definitely think that I think it'll be very interesting to see how like those touches and inspirations go on over time. I mean, like a good example is, and since we there were spoilers in this already, but like with Anima existing in Endwalker, they had the person who designed Anima design Anima for 14. So like those people are still on staff, right? So, you're less likely to be the root inspiration of something you're inspired by something you work on than something that you played at a younger age. And so there's just like little touches of that, like there's like a tapestry of understanding where some of the devs come from, or like some of the things that you can see where certain norms or ideas for 14 come from by understanding what inspires the people working on it, right? I mean, and that shouldn't be surprising, but it's, it's telling. And then it's also it's pretty telling that Ishikawa loves 3, seeing as her first expansion was Shadowbringers. I've yet to have a reason to return to my hometown, but I guess PAX is a reason next year. Hey, there you go. Good to see, glad to have you. I mean, like, hey, any justification, right? I may be moving out east in the next year or so, so that actually might make doing that a lot easier. But yeah, don't forget, if you like doing community events and stuff with us, or you like just being able to run events, talk about 14, both in lore or general stuff, as well as play content together, you can join our Discord. It's a good place for that. And yeah, we have all sorts of events running, like PvP, farming, EX mounts, maps, any number of things. Don't move out east, move out west. I mean, like, moving out west, like, cost of living is a bitch. And the thing is, it is in the east too, but like, also west has, water problems right now. And and also there's just like not a lot of specific reasons unless I was going into specific industries for me. There's PAX West. Yes, but I can always fly over. Let me put it this way. I may have access to a lot cheaper specific and cheaper housing if I move out east right now, and a lot more space. So it's not that I want to move out east in and of itself, but I have a lot of opportunity from it that is exciting, and there's other reasons that I'm excited too. So, actually, we're flooding California. I mean, to be fair, the water rising is going to happen everywhere though, so. I also asked my niche lore question here. Yeah, is it possible for someone like Coco Busi from the Thaumaturge questline to expand their Aether reserves? We sort of saw this with Arya and Red Mage. So yeah. So Samuel, the Aether reserves. So one thing is that like your soul density, for instance, can affect your Aether reserves or your potentia, which is a different question, but just as an example. We also know people can grow stronger as a function of time, not only in like their technique and ability and skill, but also as a byproduct of like increasing their own ability to store Aether, both because of like physical mass and other reasons besides. So yeah, you definitely can. It's very clear. Well, it's very clear that it's ambiguous how much and the mechanisms by which you do, because it's supposed to be less of a mathematical thing and more of a pseudo physics, pseudo spiritual thing, if that makes sense. So the answer is yes. The limitations are always deeply ambiguous, and will always be that way because it's not. They don't want to do scout. What's the scouters say about their power level, about Aether, right? About like people's ethereal capacity. Here I go watching the VOD because I missed everything. Oh, Elvis, I'm sorry, man. Good to see you. Glad to have you though. I get it. I hope you enjoy the East. Yeah, me too, Daniel. And also, I love going out west, so I will be going out there semi-regularly. Speaking of, we'll be going out to Nevada, which not West Coast per se, but we'll be heading out to Nevada for the FanFest, and that's very exciting. Snowing where I am. Yeah, right now it's actually getting real warm up in Minnesota, so it's like things are melting and it's nice. We'll probably get faked out again, but we're having tornado watches now. Woo! Midwest? So there's hope, but it's not a straight line. I like that. Yeah, exactly, Samuel. Exactly. Absolutely. And what I would say is if you look to the MSQ as well as particularly Encyclopedia Eorzean Volume 1, that as an idea is repeatedly gotten at. We have a video on aetherology that will kind of get at that. But Aether and the physical body are touched on there. It's also touched on a little bit. It's a different aspect of the question, but it is of importance to the question in, like, for instance, Monteshane's talk during the early first third of Endwalker, which that has more to do with the soul, but and like the metaphysics of incorporeal and corporeal Aether, but that can be relevant kind of to understanding that the nebulous concept of the limitations of a soul are not, even to people who very much understand them and know, it's not just a soul is not just straight up only a battery. It kind of still is, but it's also more than that, and it affects, and that plus the body affects a multitude of things. You can look at also, for instance, the way in which Xeno still has limitations because of the corporeal form he has when he doesn't, not in his own body, but also still has power, What I tell myself every time I have to go out in snow: we don't have an earthquake, tornadoes, venomous animals, and tornadoes. Yeah, or wildfires or droughts. Yeah, but you're also on an island, so how long before you have to worry about the water? I now imagine thaumaturges doing physical exercise to buff their mana storages and getting really buff. I mean, that might matter, but also, yeah, there's been multiple points at which characters have had soft increases in power and strength and mana based and like etheric reserves based on both like physical conditioning and mental conditioning. So it can't, so just treating it purely as strictly as a purely only a physical body corporeal flesh thing is clearly not the case. But also, a big part of it is also how you use Aether, right? You can have a small reserve, like red mages use much less Aether on the whole than a white mage or a black mage because they're not drawing on ambient Aether, but they quicken it using their catalyst and use it much more precisely, right? Whereas a black mage is a giant battering ram, a red mage is a scalpel. Living in level is damn hot, like, oh, yeah, Las Vegas is 90, 100 degrees or more like hell, so stay hydrated in summer heat. Yeah, luckily, Ichigo, I've been around, I've been lucky enough to travel quite a bit, so I am used to being in environments like that, and I really appreciate the forewarning. We had a small tornado a few days ago here in SoCal, so that's just listed everything we have here. Just started Shadowbringers, okay. Yeah, the same storm system I think is moving with. Okay. Yeah, if you just started Shadowbringers, a lot of things will also be answered about metaphysics over the course of Shadowbringers and Endwalker, for sure. Aether has unique places of being both a physical and a metaphysical concept and study. Yep. Maybe we can teach Kokobushi some red magic. I mean, hey, we'd have to teach him the how to balance, you know, the ethereal magics around white magic. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing stopping you, right? The reason that like red mage, for instance, and jobs that you learn after being a after like A Realm Reborn, you can pick up without having a class before is partly because red mage, as long as you understand thaumaturgy or conjury, and preferably both, you can fundamentally pick up the basic. You already know the basics of red mage. Effectively, it's kind of like, think about how Marauder goes into warrior, right? Whatever. Conjury or thaumaturgy, and arguably, really, it should be both, go into red mage, or it's stuff like that. So there's nothing that would stop someone from learning it. The benefit of a soul crystal is that it allows you to skip some steps. You just have to know how to read a soul crystal, and you know how to read that because if you understand thaumaturgy and the manipulation of black magics and aether in general, and you understand the manipulation of white magics with conjury, then you can read the soul crystal effectively, which would allow you to be able to use it to shorten the lessons of being able to learn red magics and use red magics. Hitting the books is just as important as working out for a black mage. Yeah, well, and not even just hitting the books, but also an understanding that's like that, but knowledge in a practical aspect of the understanding of one's of how to manipulate one's own aether, of ethereal ley lines, not just the literal ones on the ground, but the ethereal causeways of yourself. If I have magic existed, I couldn't use it. What is it? Maybe we can teach. Yeah. Black mages rip aether from the surroundings. Yep. Does thaumaturgy do the same, or is it more reliant on personal ethereal reserves? As far as I know, thaumaturgy is fundamentally should be the same practice because conjury is. If you play the conjury quest line, you know, like how, but conjury also can be taken from within oneself. So you know what? Give me one quick second. Because the conjury also deals with the fact that I'm forgetting her name, but also steals upon her own reserves. Maybe it is of the self more predominantly, because that would make more sense based on the threat, and also the fact that the threat of what white magic and black magic does and why it's hidden away is because it so rampantly pulls on the surrounding aether. Cultivate and pass on much knowledge. Sorry, classes aren't always one of my biggest strengths. I tend to focus more on the jobs. Yeah. You know, I can also give you a better answer to that later, but I would look to go look at the conjury quest line and look at the language that's specifically used with Sylvie? No, I don't think that's it. But because I would say that conjury and thaumaturgy would be fundamentally rooted in the same place. I just picked wrong time to jungle 2 emotional expansions. Yeah, it's gonna be a ride, that's for sure. Red mage also needs an understanding of swordsmanship. You need both wizard and Ignito Montoya. Yeah. But like I would say definitely there's a martial aspect to it, right? I think you would assume by the point at which you're learning red mage in canon, you would have learned all the classes too. So you would have a fundamentally martial understanding. I mean, I guess in canon at that point you would have to have already been a dragoon and a warrior. I mean, if we're going by the warrior of light, right? I understand the stabby part of red mage. Okay, cool. But what if your warrior of light picked red mage but not black or white mage? Is there a canonical answer as to why it works for it? It's just the answer from a technical standpoint of why you wouldn't have to learn those classes and jobs and still be able to pick it up is don't worry about it. We're not going to make you do that because it would be annoying and just make it easy for you to play the job. From a canon standpoint, there's not really a good answer. If you don't understand the fundamentals of like black and white magic manipulation or like thaumaturgy and conjury in general, in theory the soul crystal shouldn't work, you know. I imagine machinist soul crystals are just say point at the target and pull the trigger. Well, all those machinist soul crystals are empty. They're fresh. We are putting our knowledge into the soul crystal for future generations to be able to use as a shortcut. But basically all soul crystals are empty right now because it's a brand new practice. Soul crystals help with that, yeah. Because but the soul crystal wouldn't help you if you can't read it. You have to have a baseline understanding of principles in order for you to use a soul crystal. Like, anyone can't just pick up a soul crystal anywhere and be able to immediately use it, you know? If I recall, conjury uses ambient aether, but in a sustainable way. Right, Sylphie has to learn to draw in nature so she doesn't kill herself. Right. Okay, Samuel. Thank you. That's what I thought it was that, but I wanted to be. But I remember the drama, the conflict around her drawing from herself. Because I think I'm pretty sure that is the case. In which case, if Conjury is drawing on ambient, thaumaturgy is almost absolutely, but probably to a much more limited degree than something like black magic or white magic, and also probably not so polarized. Because Conjury is pulling on elemental magics in a broad swath, right? Whereas white magics tend to tilt a very specific direction. You're talking so eloquently about 14 lore. I almost forgot you were talking about a video game. Thank you. Much appreciated for the kind words. And yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about it. So and also, anything you choose to engage with, as long as you engage with it earnestly and take it seriously, you can treat something like a video game with gravitas. Yeah, the Book of Knowledge. Yeah, we never saw Alice do Conjury or Thaumaturgy, and since Red Mage, but Arcanism, right? And since Red Mage and Eternal, maybe those two understanding aren't required. I would say, though, but that fundamentally she understands ethereal manipulation through Arcanism, and we know that she specifically learned the sword play through Zhruntia, right? By traveling him with a period of time and was picking that up. So to me, the fundamentals, I mean, I guess, I don't know that you would need Thaumaturgy or Conjury. I think that's potentially fair as an argument through Alice. But I think you have to have at least some background in ethereal manipulation, like Arcanism, for instance. Even you don't have the scions that fill the roles, so you might learn a little from them. Yeah. Hydaelyn, and also it's worth pointing out that, people can Y'shtola isn't a black mage, right? She's a sorceress. Which I know Alice is a red mage, but just to point out that, there are practices outside of the, confines of just what the thing is. Hydaelyn made man, Machinist made man equal. Couldn't you argue Alice would have gained basic knowledge of white black magic through her time in the studium? Yeah, I mean, probably. I mean, you could, but there's a difference between it would be reasonable to assume versus we know, right? And the thing is, we don't know, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, not concerned, as far as I'm aware of any specificity of her learning those things. It would be reasonable to assume, but at the very least, we know she knows Arcanism, which means she understands ethereal manipulation. Yeah, I'm dude, I am so excited for Volume 3. I remember when they announced it, I ran across that room. I think I dived into the wall or something. I'm pretty sure there's a clip of it on the Discord somewhere. Charlene is known with many healing jobs. Y'shtola was canonically a conjurer. So my question is, do they have some knowledge of white magic based on some scions and lore? Almost certainly. For sure? Because the thing is, Y'shtola may have learned those practices at the point upon entering Eorzea. But it's probably likely that she learned them in the studium and in Charlene. Or from Louisoix. And Louisoix's own capacity means that, yeah, and their focus on, theoretical knowledge as well, I think it's almost, yeah, you have to assume. And I bet you there's even some more evidence to support that. It's somewhere in the many dialogues of Charlene as a whole. Yeah. Black and white magic aren't publicly available, wouldn't be taught in the studio. Well, no. So there's a difference between black and white mage versus the manipulation of, astral and umbral aether, or darkness and light magic, or aether, or those jobs specifically were locked away. But black and white magic manipulation, and not black and white, but the general practices around elemental manipulation towards the astral and the umbral and all that is actually exists in other practices. So an example would be Astrologian. Will use astral or white magics, and that comes in Charlene has those, right? Or what's another good example? I mean, Sage. Sage has existed for years and is uses practice in that same place. I know too much about Destiny and 14. Yeah, well, I definitely can relate to you on the 14 bit. Scream my wake up alarm. 14 knowledge is getting better. Good. Yeah. Hey, if you have any questions, always glad to help, and you can always glad to talk about it. Yeah, I forgot blue soul crystals are made on the spot. Are they made on the spot? Because I know he had a whole bunch of them that he brought over from the New World, but does he make them? Maybe I'm misremembering something. Wait, we're getting a Volume 3? Yes, it's gonna probably be, I would look to sometime around 7.0, but maybe earlier. I have 1 and 2, yeah, and you get cute minions. Yes, I'm very tempted to link Elio screaming over Volume 3 clip. I mean, you can go ahead and do it, Bean. It's pretty funny. Yeah, very loud headphone warning. God damn it, I know I want to level so many jobs. I need to finish Skull or Summoner first. Well, on the bright side, at least you can level them both at the same time. Remember, dungeon spamming works real well for leveling. The other thing you can do is you can do, it's very easy to level from Heaven on High, then you can do from 50 to 60, 51 to 61, or 51 to 60, you know, Palace of the Dead, 51 to 61, 60, Heaven on High, 61 to 70, Baja, 71 to 80, and then Orthos, 81 to 90. So, like, that works. There's tons of ways. All of them good. You just got to figure out what works best for you. Definitely dungeon spamming is my experience one of the fastest. Only thing I'm trying to figure out is Hydaelyn the source? Yes. Hydaelyn is the source. That is something that is not revealed in Shadowbringers. It is explained in Shadowbringers, but it is something that has been in lore since Heaven's Word. Hydaelyn is the source. As long as you mean the star, not the entity. I'm 86 to 87. Okay, so you're making good time. So it sounds like Eureka Orthos' runs in my future. Hey, you can build up light in that, get a bunch of fun rewards, and get leveling at the same time, and also potentially get tomestones. Hey, you know, star, I think. Yeah, if you mean the star, so the star, the celestial body is the source. Yes, that is called Hydaelyn. It also has another name, but I will not spoil it here. But that is the source. And the thing is that all the reflections are effectively the same star, a same star. We don't know how they exist in physical space in relationship to each other, but what it seems like, imagine that they're kind of like all overlapped on each other, but shifted dimensionally in space. That may turn out to not be exactly right, but at current, it's effectively the most, it's the best way that we understand them to exist. So so at one point, all the stars existed. So at one point, there was one star, and then it was split into 14, the source and its 13 reflections. But they all started out with the same physical geography. And the way I can prove that is if you look at a map of Norvrand. And I will pull one up right now. So if you pull up a map of Norvrand, right? And then we pull up a map of Eorzea. If you look, it's literally the exact same shape. Literally, this is Ishgard, this is Garabania, this is where Mordona, the Crystal Tower, Lake Silvertear, Amarangus Thanalin, Calusia is just Vilbrand. You know, literally, not only is it kind of the same, it's literally geographically identical. Because it literally pulled it up. It's literally, you can see it's 1-to-1. The exact same. You can even see, like, if you see this like little tip here, you see this part and this little tip here. If you go to the Norvrand map, you can even see the little tip cut off by the flood of light. You can even like literally overlay the images and they'll perfectly sync up. You see these 3 islands right here. It's literally those exact same 3 islands. It's like it's 1-to-1. Star equals planet. Yes. Sorry. In 14, star is the term that they use for planet. At least in English. So a star could be a literal star, like the celestial body, or it could be a planet. Basically, just made a brand out of it, and the entire Blue Quest line is us providing ads for it. Yeah. Basically. Yeah, okay. L is a mating sound. Sure. Yep. The lore mating sound, that's for sure. Lore nerd mating sound. Did it specifically have to be split into 14 pieces in game lore-wise, or was it just to keep in theme with the game? I think that was more of just like a fun thing because of Final Fantasy XIV. There is actually a good justification from a lore standpoint of that the sundering into 14 shards was sufficient in order to make Zodiark weakened, and like if you only split him in half, he may have still been too powerful to break his bonds, but by splitting it into 14, he is severely hampered. That would be my guess. I mean, like, if you want to ask from an in-universe standpoint, that's my justification. You want to ask from an outside view standpoint, 14 because it's Final Fantasy 14 and isn't that kind of cute, you know? Also, it had to be enough that, like, they could do all the calamities and still have some remaining and all that jazz. He also implied that he enthralled Shinryu, correct? Yes. He also said that we haven't unlocked the full potential of the Echo, but nothing came of that. Thoughts? I mean, but it did. I mean, the thing is that we just don't use our Echo to dominate, right? Like, he uses it to that extent, but the thing is, his point is not we don't have the full capacity to use our echo to traverse everyone's memories to dominate the bodies of others, right? The reason that nothing came of it is because there are more, I won't spoil them for Endwalker here, there are more events that come of that statement and of his use of those things, but we wouldn't do those because they're inherently evil. So to me, it's not that so much nothing came of it, it's that the capacity to do such things are more rooted in things that only he would do. You know? I think it's to split the elements, astral, umbral counterparts. Well, but no, because Kevin, the reflections are all equally balanced. Because if you mean in terms of you mean that the reason that was split into that many, because the astral and umbral calamity and its elemental charge has no bearing on the reflection itself. Like, the first isn't particularly umbral aligned before the flood of light. It was just intentionally tilted in that direction. Any reflection can be tilted any direction. So I think, so if that's what you mean, then I would disagree because because it's not that each reflection has a specific element associated with it. More of an option question asked during the PvP event. Is it wrong that VRs eat rabbits, bunnies, meat, food items? Is it wrong for mankind to eat apes? I'll leave. I guess I'll just leave it at that. If we eat monkey, is that bad? I think they use Star Planet as a thing throughout the FF as a whole. Is it? I know it's used at least a couple of times. I know there's a couple of examples of that. I know it's also partly because there's more terms for the differentiation between like Hoshi and like in Japanese. On the near quest, do they explain how the aliens get to the shard they do? I know there have been a lot of confusions on shard physics in space and aliens can get to the source. I would say look to the starry expanse between dimensions in 14 and then look to ending E of Nier Automata. As well as playing all of ending 8th, or as well as playing all of the Nier raids. I feel like it's a little confusing, but it does explain. So is the Calamities just a shard rejoining? Yes. So, well, kind of. So, no and yes. What happens during a rejoining is you have the Ascians tilt one of the shards towards Astral, Umbral, and Elements. It doesn't matter. All they have to do is they have to tilt it towards that, and it tilts and tilts and tilts and tilts until it sits on the precipice of, like, utter destruction. And then they cause a cataclysmic event on the source. So, for instance, the Crystal Tower sinking beneath the ground, causing the 4th Umbral Calamity. Bahamut's release, causing the 7th Umbral Calamity. The flood of, the etheric flood, the flood of water that caused the destruction of Nim and Mach during the 6th. What happens is that a normal cataclysmic event, so something like that would have been a normal flood, but because also the reflection is being tilted towards water and that water aether is seeping in, it causes the natural calamity that would have, natural or unnatural, but the what should have been a smaller calamity to get much bigger, and the destructive powers of that calamity also create a crack, so it's both cause and effect of that. Then when that crack forms, all the aether of the reflection pools into the source, and that giant flood of aether causes all sorts of crazy shit to happen, like the utter destruction of the calamity, what happened with Bahamut, the levels of destruction of the Bahamut and the astrality of that calamity to take place. We may or may not use it for Summoner's 90 spells, yeah. Zeros is jerkface, we are not jerkface, ergo no mind control. Yeah, Viera eating rodents is not cannibalism, and neither is Lalafell eating Poputos. Monkey brains are pretty tasty from what I hear. Well, I mean, like, that, you can all decide that for yourself. Oh, that's good to know. I thought the Ascians exploited the innate overabundance of a particular element. No, they are the ones who tilted it. So so for instance, this is a little bit of 6.3 spoiler, but like the Contra Memoria and everything being tilted toward darkness was because of their machination, not because the 13th was naturally dark. The first being tilted towards light was a byproduct of them making sure that that Ardbert and his gang were winning too much, the good guys were winning too much, and then that darkness was too much on the back foot, and then the light and what happened with Metron, was the event that kicked off things. But that's also why the 13th and the 1st fell incorrectly, is that what happened with the 13th and the 1st is on the 13th, the Ascians were too good at what they're doing, caused the darkness to win too much, but the source wasn't, there was no event on the source ready to like cause the wall between the reflection and the source to break so that the Aether could be rejoined. What then happened is the 13th got a flood of darkness, but it couldn't go back to the source. So instead it just destroyed the world. So it's now like a lifeless, overly astral void, and that's why it's called the Void, or also the 13th. The first was the same thing. The first should have been a completely umbral wasteland when the flood of light began, because the source was not ready to accept that Aether. There was no cataclysmic event ready to go during the time of like 3.x, right? So because of that, but what Hydaelyn did with Arbor and her crew was to go in there, hold back the light, and at least keep the star partly alive. And not just completely subsumed by the flood of light. But there's no implication that the 13th or the 1st, as of now, have particular affinities before being tilted in that direction. The same way that the 7th, I think, would not have had. 7th was astral too. I have them all written down, but there's no immediate implication that it is. These shards are this way. Partly also because if they were, then the balance also doesn't make a lot of sense, because there would be 8 that are accounted for in terms of elements and balancing. But what about the other, 5, right? Because you still have, you have 8 that are elementally rejoined. And then also, here's another thing that becomes weird. The 7th, when it was rejoined, was astral. It was an astral cataclysm as well. It's same as like it was astral and dark, like what happened to the 13th. So like it shows that there's that one could be done and repeat. Now, why they do it in a cycle like that, we don't know. It's never clearly explained as far as I've ever been able to found the particular reason. There's some speculation about maintaining the balance of the source in doing it that way, but I don't. We never get a clear answer other than maybe that they just really like symmetry for some reason. Question was Golbez doing, what is Golbez doing versus rejoining? Is there a difference? Yeah, because he's not trying to rejoin the 13th, because you can't rejoin the 13th right now. I mean, it's a soft rejoining, because what that would be is go, also, please try to be mindful of spoilers, but like, if you have an incursion onto the source, you're not so much rejoining as just allowing parts of a reflection to be rejoined to the ethereal sea, but that's problematic if it's, we don't know, well, we could be problematic. We don't know what happens when that amount of astrality would flood in a way that's not, that the world's not set up for. When I first learned about mechanics of rejoining, I thought they needed to make at least one calamity aspected after each of the elements and light and darkness. Yeah, so that makes sense, right? Why you would think that, because they do that, but there's no implication that there's a need to do that, especially because there's been 2 darkness attempts, right? With the 13th and there's a cutscene where the metaphysics of this are explained both by the Exarch and by Emmett Selk. The reflections are explained by the Exarch, and then about 2/3 of the way through Shadowbringers, the Emmett Selk explains the specificity of how these function, and I recommend reviewing that scene. The 13 was supposed to be Eorzean's fault specifically. Well, it was, because Eorzean didn't exactly know what they were doing. It was their first failure. It wasn't so much supposed to be hers, but like it was factually hers to an extent. Although it's kind of all of their faults, really. Lore question, who's the dumbest Ascian? Like that, even the other Ascians facepalm over. I don't know that they're... So the thing is that we have multiple that are unaccounted for, like Dudelaphon, Altima, like... So like some of which we just can't account, we don't know. It also depends on their incarnation, right? I would point out that, like, Laha Brea, because he's been on like, constant go, Emmett Selk kind of has some scorn for him for not, like, playing the long game, crowning active idiocy and all that. Nabrialis definitely has a lot of, hubris. I don't know that you would necessarily call him dumb. Because he was like to not expect, like if you are actively acting as like an immortal being that has no weakness, and then someone after thousands of years or hundreds of years, however long his raised reflection has been in the seat, is someone like comes out of nowhere with a way to kill you, that's not just idiocy, that's like a surprise that you may not have been able to account for. Sideburns McGee. Yeah, you're talking about Nabrialis. I mean, like, I guess, but I would say he's more full of hubris than an idiot. You know, I mean, like, I don't know that any of the convocation are particular idiots. You know. Speaking of Ethereal Sea, is there one great sea with little regions for each reflection, or does each reflection has its own? This is explicitly explained in Endwalker. Each and this is very relevant for future content as well. Each reflection and the source have their own ethereal sea. And it takes great amounts of effort for a soul or an entity to be transported from one to another. It can be done by specifically powerful entities, but there are 2 cases of that being done that I can think of in specific. But they are each their own, completely disconnected from each other. It is basically a byproduct of what the heart of a star of like is. It's basically each star will have its own ethereal sea based on the fact that it's, you know, what's coalesced at its core. Does each Ascian have a speciality in specific type of magic? For example, La Habre with fire magics. Not fire magics in specific, but they have specific roles in terms of like what they study. Like some do work with aquatic life, some work with I'm forgetting who's who, but basically they all have specific parts of their role, which does give them specializations. But the other thing is it depends on who holds the seat of office, right? Some people just trend towards certain abilities even within that. You know, like for instance, the other thing is that a lot of Ascians have, you know, use astral or dark magics, but that's mostly to do with their tempering and devotion to Zodiark, not because of their own like personal dispositions beyond that, you know. If this is still live, I'm 10 minutes behind. And do we know what the 3 islands next to Hydaelyn is? It's right. Yeah, I have. Yes, we do. Let me find my list. I don't know. There's not really a lot of lore about them, but we do know what they're called. And I have it written down somewhere. I wonder if there would be any way to use the umbrality of the first to counteract the astrality of the third. Yeah, so a lot of people have argued that. So the problem is maybe, but the problem is how do you get all that astrality onto the 13th in a meaningful way? And you can't rejoin reflections into each other, and even if you did, you would kill everyone on the first. Because the reflections can only rejoin to the source. So, you know. Let me get a high res. Let me get. Oh wait, no, there is actually the sound. I know that what is it freaking called? The FFXIV sound. Oh my god, why am I having a hard time reading today? Okay. Eorzean script. I need to go back to practicing my Eorzean script because apparently I'm rusty on reading. If it's not like very clear. That's like the raw. Isn't it Rothlet? Am I wrong? Is it not the Rothlet sound? Roth. Yeah, Roth. Wait, what's the Y? Roth. Oh no, Rothy. Yeah, Rothit. Okay. Rothit sound. FFXIV. Yeah, the Rothlet sound. We do know bits and pieces from the fishing logs. Like, that's the main thing that we tend to get stuff from. Yeah, it's an inlet. That's the sound. But what about that's the islands themselves though are. See, I freaking love 14 geography, but sometimes I forget some of the smaller things like Cape Meat and stuff. What is that symbol? The pearl, right? Yeah, the pearl. The pearl, FXIV. See if I have anything in my notes. I don't know that there is anything about those. There might be something in like 1.0 lore, but I don't really have anything. And Encyclopedia Eorzean Volume 1 doesn't have a lot. The best I would hope for is that if you look for any of the fish in the Rothlet Sound, they may tell you more about the islands off these islands. I bet you they have something. I mean, it's kind of like how we had the Cialidays. It's like kind of like how we had the Cialidays, where we had very little information of for a long time until they became important, right? When the Rotano, they used for Island Sanctuary. So too much light is bad and too much dark is bad. Yes. Another important thing to understand about how light and dark work is, light is tends toward umbrality by nature, and dark tends towards astrality, but astral and umbral are not dark and light. Something can be astral without being dark, and something can be umbral without being light. Umbral is passivity, dark is and astral is change. But if you have a lot of light, you inherently have a lot of umbrality, because light is automatically tends towards it. And if you have a lot of dark, you automatically have astrality. So just like remember that something like astral is not just a synonym for dark, and umbral is not just a synonym for light. Too much of anything is bad. Yeah, I get it. Too much gas in it. Yeah, too many pillows is bad. Too many tombstones is good. Too many tombstones is good until you start running, being unable to get more. Yeah. But also, Kevin, did that explain your question? To anyone who asked their question, did you feel like you have it explained? It's both Eorzean and La Habrea, the former for failing the entire Shard, and La Habrea for entire ARR and Heavensward, according to Emmett. Yeah, but Eorzean failed because of something none of them knew. Like, Emmett Selk also didn't know. Like, but the thing is, La Habrea's plan was getting shit done, got the 7th Umbral Calamity done, and was setting up for the 8th. So, like, La Habrea's act of idiocy is only an act of idiocy because he messed up there. And Eorzean messed up on something that none of them would have gotten it right. Emmett himself is like, okay, we may have gotten a little carried away, and maybe we didn't fully understand what we were doing at the time, right? Too much cake is bad, but it requires a lot of cake. Yeah. A puddle of water can be water that is umbria aligned, while a flowing river or waterfall can be water that's astrally aligned. Yeah. You're literally a warrior of light that you constantly change and move. Yeah, well, but see, that's a difference. That's conflating that light being, like, being a warrior for light and for... Because the thing is, like, light, you need a certain amount of passivity and umbrality in order to be alive. The same way that you need change, right? But light as an element is not the same thing as just saying you are the warrior of passivity, right? Like, Hydaelyn is not the being of passivity just because her realm, like, her abilities reside within that. Why is he trying to rejoin? Or should I just wait till Endwalker? Well, that's explained in Shadowbringers. So the why the rejoinings are done is basically the climax of well, part of the climax of Shadowbringers. I mean, it's kind of conveyed to you throughout. So Endwalker already kind of assumes you know, but so if you're in the middle of Shadowbringers, then you'll find out very, very soon. Doesn't Hydaelyn put it best that it says Umbrality helps impart stability creation? Yeah, that is, yeah, thank you, AC. I was trying to remember what the quote was, and I could not pull it up, thank you. That is basically it. You need the astral to grow, but you also need the umbral for stability. Yeah, I like what you said about the Warrior of Light not imposing on other beings. Makes sense. It puts the burning question at ease. Yeah, I just wish they would have put a bit into that into Summoner rework. Yeah, I guess... I guess the thing to me, though, is that because we're not summoning primals, we're summoning eggies, right? It's rooted in a completely different thing. We're not dominating primals. We're using the ethereal pattern of primals channeled through crystals, into crystals and you know, our carbon, into a form of elemental in order to create an entity rather than dominating the will of a primal, you know? Like, because, like, you know, it'd be one thing if we... what the practice of summoning was at 90, you summon a Bahamut primal and then you're dominating its will. But like, one, that would be fucked on a number of levels, and then also be fucked on a number of other levels. Like, both morally and lore standpoint, that would cause a lot of problems, you know? Cinder Eggs, good to see you, glad to have you. I just split this guy open. Okay, so you've got a little ways to go. But if by the end of Shadowbringers you'll have an answer to your question. I think I'm a warrior of passivity. I like to chill under a tree. Hey, there you go. Would have been an opportunity to change it from eggies to primals. Yeah, but if you change it to primals, what you're doing is effectively evil. Because what you're doing then is one, the amount of aether required to do that would be problematic. And two, you're summoning sentient beings to forcibly be dominated under your will in order to fight with for a short period of time. You know? Like, you literally would be going against the entire point of, like, what you had been doing up to that point. And then even... Because the requisite faith and aether required to create a being like a primal you know, I mean, think about Eden and how we mess up even when we just try to imagine them. The reason that they can summon primals the way they do is because of their faith, right? Sundered beings can't use creation magics in the same way that a unsundered being could, you know? Because like switching it over to primals, I think becomes problematic on a number of levels. Because if assuming we can even do it without accidentally introducing the concept of like them tempering, which is, you know, any number of problems there, you're basically stealing. Yeah, it's just like I feel like there's the moral quandary around that becomes way more specific when it's not just an elemental that's an incarnation of the etheric pattern, right? And I don't necessarily know, it wouldn't be any stronger is the thing, because the primal would only be able to be as powerful as the aether we can provide it, and we're not able as a single entity without, you know, large sums of crystals and other things around it, being able to like channel that amount of aether would either completely tax us to the point, like either we couldn't do it literally, or we could, but it would tax us to the point that we couldn't function and be able to manipulate. We wouldn't have much left, you know? I caught up. Thanks for trying to answer the 3 hours question. Definitely, Elvis. Did primals come out during 1.0 from Midgard Summer? No. So there was a seal over Silver Tier that released a lot of aether. The specifics of that is still unclear. Once you get to Endwalker, the current alliance raid is starting to hint towards some answers of that question. The 1.0 trailer has been should not necessarily be treated as literal, and also to some extent has been ambiguous as how they want to define what happened. All we know for sure is after the event of the Battle of Silver Tier, some sort of seal on something broke and a large amount of aether was released. Then summonings began to happen in earnest after that period of time. Now, some suggest that the reason for that is that there was some, you know, seal on the summoning of primals. However, if you know what the natures of primals are, that really shouldn't stop anything, because the practice of it is more rooted in like the faith and the practices taught by the Ascians to different people. So what's more likely is that the release of that aether released a large amount of aether in general, and then also from there the Ascians started enacting more plans to have the different tribes start summoning them by teaching them. Yeah, I never put together one, but yeah, because think about where Midgard Summer comes from. Think about Midgard Summer existed in a spiritual form and was acting as a servant of Hydaelyn as trade for letting his children, remain upon Etheris. So he came from above the clouds. What's above the clouds over Mordona? If you've done the most recent alliance raid, and he was tasked with defending something. What could be possibly more important than the Omphalos? You know, as something, just as an idea. Things like necromancy would also go against all known morality. Right. Not that they couldn't find some way to justify it, I'm sure, but as everyone who's been around a while knows, I'm very advocate against, like, as far as the game's concerned currently, they couldn't make a necromancer class that wouldn't be inherently morally evil, because even if you play, like, the alchemist quest lines, it's very clear that, like necromancy and the the thing is, like, if your necromancy is you taking control of someone else's soul and reincorporating them in order to dominate them, that's just evil. It just is evil. If your practice is to take the bodies of other people and use them as your minions, that is at best deeply macabre, gross, and looked down upon by everyone, but it basically might as well be evil, you know? We as the Warrior of Light does have health, stability, or change in our adventures. Doesn't that mean we appropriate as Warrior of Light? Doesn't that seem appropriate as Warrior of Light and Darkness? Yeah. Yet there is Necromancer here in the game in one particular place. I'm not sure what you mean. To be fair, the recreation with Eden is supposed to be shoddy creation magics in a fashion. Right, but part of the reason that it's shoddy is because of our non-clarity, right? We don't have... So yes, Eden is there's more asterisks along Eden, so you're not wrong, AC. But as a general point to talk about the requisite faith and focus to draw upon something of that specific, kind. Reapers have employees, summoners are sugar daddies, and Dark Knights are self-employed. God, I never put together 1.0 and current alliance raids. Well, there you go. Being vague, but did you have issues with how we used primals in 6.0 to get to the final map? It really did seem like they didn't have full free will. No, to me, I was perfectly fine with it because they are an incarnation of the tribal groups beseeching their gods for aid in order to save them, right? So to me, the tribal groups united with us. They summoned their gods from their standpoint as they're supposed to be, and look and beseeched them to deliver them onto salvation because because they were facing the end of the world, and then with their own temperaments, conceded, right? And can you say that because they were summoned as a byproduct of earnest faith, they wouldn't ever have declined? Yeah, maybe that might be fair, but there's much more. If you watch that scene, because I rewatched it recently, there's much more chagrin on the part of some. Like, some of them are just fucking down for it and ready to go, and then the ones like Garuda that are more like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this, aren't, oh god, this is a terrible fate. It's much more like, I can't believe I'm helping people who don't fly to fly. This is terrible. It's much more of an ironic, how the roles have changed. Is ice element umbral? So 3 of the elements are trends towards umbrality, and 3 of the elements towards trends towards astrality. Let me pull up my photo stuff. Where did I put? Give me one quick second. Okay, I guess I just don't have one saved. That's fine. Let me pull it up. FFXIV Aether chart. So, if you look at the ethereal chart, right? There are 3 up top and 3 on bottom. Wind, lightning, and fire trend towards the astral and change. Water, ice, and earth tend towards umbral and stasis. So while you can have astral ice or umbral fire, they tend towards that. Gauntlet. The hero's gauntlet. Oh, from another. Well, so infinite. So that's different though, because that's heroes from another reflection in another place and time. So that's very different to talking about the moralities and ethics of Eorzea and the people we're around, right? And and also, like, if I remember right, necromancy from that is much more like black magic. If I'm not, let me check it out. Actually, I won't, because that'll might go into spoilers. But another good example would be, like, literally anything to do with necromancy is seen as inherently evil with Nybeth Obilord, or with how they refutes the natural progression of souls returning to the ethereal sea. I would just say that, like, the entirety of the text of 14 emphasizes that within the confines of Hydaelyn and, like, its morality, it is not good. It happens sometimes, but it's like Trader's Spurn, right? Think about how the Trader's Spurn is treated. Think about how the Alchemist quest lines go. Think about how Nybeth and all the things with around, Todorok, or, the desecration of bodies with not Todorok, Tantara, Ice isn't umbral necessarily, just closest to it. Yeah, and more, tends towards would be the way I'd summon it. Summoning primals based on fear as opposed to summoning them based on hope seems like Dynamis to me. Well, I mean, Dynamis is a completely different energy and reacts to emotions, but like, yeah, but just because you have an emotion while doing, like, emotions without affecting Dynamis can affect Aether too. Like, anger affects ethereal channeling without necessarily being a byproduct of Dynamis. So it's not just emotions equal Dynamis. Emotions just are the way to control Dynamis, whereas like cognition and is the way that Aether is primarily controlled, or like through physiological specific means. I find that ironic because Destiny 2, the Darkness subclass is also Ice or Umbral. Oh, there you go. Interesting. Yeah. Does anyone have any lore questions? I mean, like, anything's good to go. I mean, I can tell you I'm having a blast answering these. I was thinking that this was just going to be watching the interview, but definitely been having a good time. You can literally summon a primal from a strong enough desire if you have enough crystals. Yes. Well, if you have strong enough desire, faith, yeah, I mean, you have your examples like awareness, like Tsukuyomi. I mean, like, the thing though is that, like, the only reason like Tsuku, for instance, can be summoned is a byproduct of the object of faith, centered around and the amount of faith and worship that that objects can store as well, like the mirror. Was Tenzin a warrior of light? Explicitly, we don't know. Almost assuredly, yes. That's my and also Helionis, good to see you, glad to have you. Look, my read on that for any number of reasons, like both because he appears to us, because of his role as the adventurer who drew people together, as his, like, yes, I would say, wait, was he a warrior? Was he a warrior of light? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Was he a prior incarnation of us, the warrior of light? I would say it's likely. And I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest it. that's different than saying the game says emphatically yes, you know? More thinking about Enkidu. Oh, well, yeah, okay. So the problem is that you can't discount Greg and Enkidu, but also there's a lot to which those guys are used kind of as comedic relief and also kind of allowed to do what they want. So the metaphysics around them are weird in particular. For instance, it's not clear, are they, you know, are they from the prior games? Are they incarnation that's referencing the prior games? Are they, like, there's how does the astral expanse, you know, the dimensional rift work, where, you know, is it literally them? Is it figuratively them? And so I tend to avoid using them as a reference point for anything because of how often they are used to just break rules for fun. But, you know, your mileage may vary on that. Since powerful magic split in the world on 14, I wonder if you fly far enough from Atheros into the infinite expanse, you eventually make to the source of the universe. Since powerful magic split the world on 14. I'm not sure I fully understand, Kevin. So if you fly, so there, I mean, like, we don't know that a Big Bang necessarily happened, but the sundering only affected our star. So no other stars the universe was not sundered. Only Hydaelyn, our planet, was sundered. Like, the Dragon Star was not sundered. That's why Midgard Summer is so powerful. You know, the Omnicron Star was not sundered. But if we know that there's an edge of the universe. We know that there's an Ultima Thule, as it were. Is Final Fantasy 3 just Endwalker, kind of? No. I mean, Final Fantasy 3 there's a lot of Crystal Tower, and there's bits of Shadowbringers, but Final Fantasy 3 is very different to Endwalker. I mean, like, clearly Ishikawa loves Final Fantasy 3, so a lot of both names, characters, and ideas and motifs show up in Crystal Tower, Shadowbringers, and to an extent Endwalker. But no, like, Endwalker's narrative is, I wouldn't say particularly close. If anything, there's more 4 in terms of, like, major plot beats. There's a lot more Final Fantasy 4 than there is Final Fantasy 3 in terms of just, like, the macro plot. But even then, it's very not, like, you'd have to reach to, like, not overly generalize. Tsukiyomi was powered by Yotsuyu's suffering. Not just by that, no. She was also powered by her faith. And, like, I think here, let me, I think there's a comment on it. Definitely was affected and influenced, right? I typed it dumb, sorry. No worries. If I don't understand, I want to, like, try to figure out what the question is. Yeah. Example, if the spaceship built on the first, could we theoretically fly so far that when we return, we'll land on the source? That's a question. We don't have any inclination that the universe loops around, and the fact that there's an explicit edge, I think would imply to me that, no, you wouldn't loop back around. That there is an edge. Based on at least certain events in Endwalker and certain comments. But, you know, it's a big fucking universe, and not everyone knows everything, so it could be that we're wrong. But I would say emphatically, as of now, if you leave, you eventually would just find an empty black oblivion beyond the bounds of all that is known. There we go, Tsukiyomi. Tsukiyomi, divinity of night and moon, was a primal summoned by Yotsuyu Go-Brutus, acting the viceroy of Doma. Although the deity is spoken of in mythology is not attributed to gender, Tsukiyomi is most often represented in works of art and literature as a male figure. By channeling the power of a sacred mirror and offering itself as a vessel, however, Yotsuyu called forth the entity in a female form. Legends state that Tsukiyomi was born from a mirrored surface of Masokagami, an artifact belonging to the first gods, and thence given dominion over the night and the moon. The divinity was also charged with leading the souls of men to the underworld, a role performed in gentle quietude. Scholars muse that Tsukiyomi's calm nature was necessary to balance the tempestuous character of Amaterasu and Susanoo, who likewise came into being in the age of creation. With the vengeful Yotsuyu serving as a host, however, Tsukiyomi's primal incarnation was steeped in simmering malice and could hardly be recognized as a tranquil deity of myth. So definitely influenced by her rage, right, and her pain. Definitely influenced and affected, but not sheerly fueled, right? The mirror actually was an important aspect of the folk, as not just a foci, but also of a, you know, an energy or part of the faith. FF9, they just tried to put Dying Star in another star, yeah. Is it ever explained in the MSQ what happened with the other Crystal Braves like Yu Yu Hase and Laurentis? Can't remember. Yeah, Yu Yu Hase, there is a little bit, some of them get more or less information. Yu Yu Hase does get a follow-up somewhere. Let me see if I can find. I have notes on this. I know I have notes on this. I know that it pops back up in Stormblood. Because they reference, yeah, rub on, yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, I know you get asked what they should do with their fate, but I swear to God, they pop back up at least one more time in something, in a side comment. But there is references to it, but some of it's dealt with bit by bit through Stormblood and the fate of some of the people who like try to help you out. Some of it's a little bit of a few side quests, and then there's also references to some of that stuff in Endwalker with the Ilsebardian contingent. Gerbluff's not sundered. Gerbluff's powerful. Aww, Umino, that's both adorable and heartbreaking. What are the chances we'll have a canon travel to the first, like your average adventure canon, or will remain world only? So, Gigantor, if you ask me, I think the thing, I've been saying this since 5.0. There's been a lot of evidence to suggest that there are people who specifically want to connect those places. Now, it has explicitly been more and more and more and more. There's a specific scion who really is on the path to trying to do that, and there's also been metaphysics explained as to why that would be meaningfully doable. So for instance, if we can go to the 13th, and the 13th can have its portals connected to the first, and are presumably other reflections, doesn't that mean the 13th could be a terminus? In order to be able to get into the other reflections from the source, right? So I think, what are the chances? High. My argument is high. Absolute? Fuck no. But high? Yes. FF3 is more Shadowbringers, Endwalkers has more FF4. And it depends on if you mean plot beat or specific references, right? Hildebrand and Co. are just dynamis all the time, yeah. So power level of Final Fantasy IV are funny over physics. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes. Not all the time, but definitely in Hildebrand. There'd be no barrier for Goldbars to break if reflections existed in the same space, I believe. Yeah, so the thing is that the barrier that he's trying to break is the, like the dimensional shifting between, right? Like, there's void tears, right? The need to go through void tears are rend in the fabric of dimensions. So it's so the implication there being, and the fact that there are the barriers that the elements need to shift through in order to reach the source, to me, implies that stars don't exist in physical space, like they exist in dimensionally shifted layered space, but we'll find out, I think, sooner rather than later. Laprid said that they don't have space for reflections, people, not the means to reach them. Yeah, no, so I think pretty emphatically that the reflections exist dimensionally shifted from one another, not in the same physical space. Shoal is using hell to realm travel. Yeah, basically. But like that, there's been hints of that since 5.0, and then 5.3 further nailed down on it, and then 6.0 further touched on it, and the role quests and Shadowbringers touch on it a lot, and Warring Triad kind of touches on it, and then 6.x has really, really touched on it. Basically, when 6.1 got announced, I like from a mile, I was so vindicated. I'm like, I've been saying we're going for this. But if you haven't watched my 7.0 theory video on where we're going, that will touch on a lot of my point. I think a lot of the points I would make here. I'm convinced myself to be certain that Endwalker the Warrior of Light would have joined the Shards despite fighting against the whole time. It just seemed that like that's where it was going. Will it ever happen? Well, but if you do that, you'll kill everyone. So I don't think so. As a Warrior of Light, to be a Warrior of Light means to not rejoin the reflections, because it means to accept the people. I mean, it's like the literal plot, like catharsis of Shadowbringers is the acceptance of people for like who they are and what they are, even if more limited in scope, and to let people have their lives and their worlds, right? So it is an inherently evil act to rejoin, because it's genocide. It's literal genocide, you know? Are caught up in facing sentences. Yeah. What were the factors to why the Braves imploded? A system that allowed for people who had no scruples to be in position of powers, and those who were incentivized to be able to take control of the system in order for their own ends was readily available. I mean, like, broadly. Death or imprisonment was this during the thing with Fordola. Yeah. Partially because of how Yoshi-P worded how Endwalker would end the story. Also the technical, I expect many have sagas they may have sagas you can select. I would be really surprised. Red Mage, if you had said that to me before 6.0, before 6.1, I would have pretty emphatically agreed with you. I'd actually at this point be pretty surprised, but I mean, it's not impossible. But it's just like, especially how much 6.1 onwards has been deeply tied into what happened before. It'd be kind of hard to start someone out without a really, really good, like some kind of onboarding. But maybe. What's the 13th? The Void. The 13th reflection of Hydaelyn is where all the Void scent come from. It was one of the reflections, and then it fell to a flood of darkness like the first did the flood of light, except for there was no Hydaelyn to hold back the flood of light from consuming the whole world. And it turned all the people there, instead of into Sin Eaters, into Void Sent. In regards to the Brave, some were likely executed as morbid as it sounds. I mean, yeah, do we ever get methods of Eorzean execution? Headsman's, hanging, firing squad? Yes! There are quite a few. In, like, Hydaelyn, sometimes it's just like, not even, like, as, sanctioned as that. It's just, you take someone who's a warrior and you just send them, like, someone who's, like, got a weapon, you just go in and you kill them. But, there's firing squads exist in Limsa, hangings. I know there's references to hangings. Let me pull up my note, I bet you I can find a hanging reference somewhere in here. The 13th is Void. Shoal is using the Hell to Rum Child. Gotta take off. Have a good day, Ryan. I'd like the Void more to purgatory than to Hell. Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. The people who live there, it's become a purgatory. I think from the outside, it's definitely very hellish. Here, let's Control F. Let's hanging. I speak, of course, the violent critics trying to. Is this? That's all text. Yeah. Okay. I'll change it. Well, here, let's see. Like, heads. Well, you know, let's try with a space. No. Well, here, let's try execution. I think I typoed that. Yeah. Okay. It's worse than the number of Ea was present during. Oh no, that's here. We want to go. Yeah. Here we go. High bridge needs to hurry to the execution site. Right, because Aldous. Remember, Aldous was being executed in the Gladiator quest line. And that was with an Axeman, I believe. What are your hopes for the rest of the story of 6.4 and 6.5? That's a good question. My personal hopes I can't go into, I think, without spoiling, because, look, I think Mirror City is 7.0, and if it is, my hopes are, I mean, like, I just need it to be good. I don't need it to be anything in specific. Like, if we end the Golbez arc as we do, like, where we're at right now, and, like, end it in 6.5, and then, like, that leads the way into what's next, that's fine with me. If Golbez is the main antagonist for 7.0, and and Mirror City is the, like, battlefront or something, it works for me. If Golbez, we defeat Golbez, but he manages to open the gates between all the reflections, and then we have the problem of, like, you know, an emperor from FF2, let's say, from one of the reflections coming in and trying to take over Atheris, like, that works for me. Like, these are just wild speculations, right? But it could be none of those things, and as long as it's well crafted, I'm happy. I don't have to, it doesn't need to be a specific thing. If they go wildly a different direction and do the new world, it's fine with me. I mean, like, I would like to not do another reflection right off the bat, seeing as we had Shadowbringers, and then we had there was a lot of, like, crazy, wild, you know, stuff going in an Endwalker that was not just terrestrial, and we have the Void as the 6.x patches, so there's a lot of reflection stuff already. So I'd be fine with not having another reflection for this, other than if they want to integrate the Void in some way. But, yeah. I need to be able to RP Dwarf so bad, that's why I ask. Yeah. I mean, I guess you can always get the armor, you know? But I see what you mean. Oh, RP a Dwarf on the source. Yeah, okay, I see your point. Yeah, they were led by a 16-year-old kid who would listen to a 16-year-old man. Really. Hey, I mean, if your only hope is, you know, salvation... you know, and you have limited options. Oh, probably talking about the Crystal Brave. Yeah, I mean, like, definitely, Alpha Note's hubris is a part of it too. Compared to heroes of other games, how powerful would you say the Warrior of Light is? I mean, doing that is a, what's the term? Not a lesson, but you know, a project in futility, because, like, there's so much context, right? Because the Warrior of Light could ultimately, let's say, be 20,000 times more powerful than Sephiroth, but all that matters is Sephiroth's relative power within his world. How powerful is the Warrior of Light? I would put them on relative par with most other major, you know, like Cloud at his most powerful or whatever, right? But I mean, I would put them up there as one of the more powerful ones if I had to generalize, but also a big part of Warrior Light's power comes from, you know, his friends are his power, right? As the seat of his as, like, the holder of the star, you know, the Helios, the star, you know, job, the Wanderer, the Adventurer's job office, you know, this is a big part of it. I mean, most of my bosses are younger than me. Well, yeah, there you go. Theory, all shards physically are on the exact same place, just phase through each other. Yeah, that's basically what I've been saying for the past couple of years. So you can open two portals to the Void in different places, enter one, walk a bit, and leave from the other. Two portals in the void. Yes, probably. Most likely, especially because of geographically, the void is, and all the reflections are identical to the source. It also would explain why you can enter to the first from the 13th or the source from the 13th, and presumably the other reflections, but we don't know. How are the Warrior of Lights chosen in the first place? We are chosen because of a causality loop that I'm not going to explain because of spoilers, and I know you aren't that far enough ahead. But others by the disposition of their strength, their soul, their morality, the things they do. Warrior of Lights, like being a Warrior of Light in terms of being Hydaelyn's chosen, is basically something anyone could attain by sufficient, acts of doing good, finding crystals of light, being called to act. Although, well, okay, to be fair, if you want to be a Warrior of Light, one of Hydaelyn's chosen in general, you also probably have to be sundered. However, there's probably cases where that's not the case. But you probably need a sundered soul so that you can be called to the Echo at the very least. But, there are probably people who've been Warrior. It depends on how you want to define it, because the term Warrior of Light has also been Hydaelyn's chosen, but it's also been those fighting for good. It's been able to be a more ambiguous or nebulous term as well. All I can recall is the Gladius where they go and throw all this off a cliff. Yeah, there's a part where, remember, because, like, the guy behind him, like, flees, but is, like, ready to execute him with an axe. I don't think they were going to cliff him. I think they were going to axe him. Although, why they would do it in front of that cliff is weird. What happened to the Braves who remain loyal to us? I know Riel stays as a spy scout, but what are the others? Do they show up in Endwalker? Some of them. Not in Endwalker. Some show up in Endwalker. There's a quest line in 5.x that touches on this. And I would say replay that. I think it's 5.5 or 5.4. Probably 5.5, if I'm not mistaken. You'll go to Alamigo and you'll talk to some people. Tells you about what happened to the Heaven's Word optional quest. Yes, thank you. A good point about opening reflections. As far as opening reflections, I think he's still work his pre-work to the future story. Yeah, I think you're probably right. There's nothing current that really ties. Well, I wouldn't say nothing, because think about 6.3 and Golbez's plan, right? Like, opening up ready access between the Void has been part of the main plot of 6.x, and a certain amount of hubris could be used against us, or any number of things, right? Like, I wouldn't say nothing, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is like something that they're establishing now, but pays off later more fully. I don't, yeah. Power of friendship. I once had a manager who was younger than me, very immature, and was the reason I quit. Ugh, that's no good. R3, good to see, glad to have you. Does every reflection have a moon with a shard of Zodiark in it? As far as we know, yes. Based on the fact that the first has a moon, the moons are not natural constructs, and therefore Hydaelyn would have made them, and she wouldn't have made one if it wasn't for a use, and based off of what we get in 6.x. Presumably. The level to which, though, the thing is that, well, I'll try to not say for Endwalker, but the Aether of Zodiark, let's say, should Zodiark have been defeated, would return to the Ethereal Sea, and probably the Ethereal Seas of the reflections associated with it. So if the same physical space theory is true, where is the rift between world that the Ascians return to? I mean, I just think of, like, it's a dimension between dimensions, right? Right, like, think about, like, the dimensional rift that Omega's in. Kind of like that same idea. It's a place between dimensions, like a pocket realm. To clarify, there are ties going to the 13th, but it's clearly Shola's doing much more research and the portal is already open. You can tell she's tinkering. Yeah, definitely. Moon can be seen in Elpis. No, well, they removed that, though. Unless you, like, hack it out. There's not supposed to be a moon in Elpis. Like, when it first launched, there was a visible one, and then they fixed that unless someone's found a way to broke it even further. But the moon is not a natural construct. Or it is not a natural thing. It is a construct. Both the red moon, Dalamud, and the platinum moon. That is explicitly stated by both the Loporrits and, I believe, a couple other characters. Since the Void Sent are designed with gothic demons and themes in mind, generally, but yeah. And Lightens, Sin Eaters are like horrific angels, generally, yeah. Do you have any wants, desires for any other elemental design themes? I mean, you see an extent, you've already seen some. Look at those who are highly tempered to the point that their physical bodies are transformed. Those in general would be, I think, the same sort of idea. And would I be interested in seeing that? Sure. Yeah. What's interesting is the level to which, if you don't do it by repeated process like tempering, whether or not extreme elemental like attunement, one of those directions, wouldn't just kill someone outright. in a way that umbrality and astrality, because umbrality and astrality aren't one of the elemental aspects, they're poles, right? So you tilt all of the aether towards a pole. However, if you aspect an aether all of one direction from a living being, I would wonder if that wouldn't just kill them unless you do it gradually, like think about the drowned in Sasasha Hard, right? Things like that. Gotta get on Crystal Mommy's good side, yeah. Not to put a fan point on it, I think I might be able to categorize at least 3 of the most powerful, not in terms of raw power alone, by feats. Yeah, but think about this. Imagine, like, just as a pitch, right? Imagine that the Warrior of Light did the most amazing feat, which they do, right? But imagine it turns out that from a relative standpoint, everything in the 14 universe is actually 90% smaller than everything in 7, right? Or whatever. Like, my point is that there are what-ifs that if you add completely about the like metaphysics of each world change everything, and also what happens when you put those people in a different context. And so that's why like arguing like who's most powerful, I mean, you can argue feats if you assume that all feats in all worlds are acting on the same principles, but we even know for Final Fantasy that's not always true. But let's say it is, then sure, I think Warrior of Light's probably the most powerful. But it's just like, to me, it's not a very interesting question because there's so many caveats you have to add, you know? Where did Ascians come from, or is that an Endwalker question? That is a Shadowbringers question. However, I will just say, you'll get a very, very... So there's already been some explanations in the MSQ up to this point. However, you'll get a very emphatic explanation throughout Shadowbringers. So I would just say, play Shadowbringers, and you'll have your answer. May or may not be the same place that we pass through when we journey between shards. Yeah. I assume it's not, because the Starry Expanse seems to be something highly specific, and is actually... It is... There's a difference between pocket dimensions and the space between all time and space. Because the Starry Expanse is not just the space between physical space of some kind. It is all the existence. It is the underlying tether through which all of time and space exists. The OG Warrior of Light, Noxus Lucas, and maybe Lightning Farron, and us, the Warrior of Light. The OG Warrior of Light. I don't know why you would say the OG Warrior of Light. And also Lightning. I mean, I guess because of Lightning Returned. Yeah, I don't know. It's just not, I don't know. You feel free to speculate on that your own, AC. I just like, I don't know. This is just, it's just fanon at that point, right? It's not like, you're not like engaging with like the world's own text in contrast to its own world. You're just like, you know, you have to come up with fanon at that point to make, you know, a rationalization as to how you can compare and contrast these things that are different. If there's a moon in every reflection, I'm wondering if Hydaelyn could create Loporrits and move every reflection to a new star in case the ruin comes as a source. Yeah, that's a good question. It may be that the amount of energy required to do so would have been taxing to a point that would have preempted her from doing it, from saving anyone else. That would be my biggest, you know, immediate guess. It also could be that there's something preventing the reflections from being able to escape a certain physical boundary beyond where the source was, or something. Like, I'm just speculating random shit on that, but I would suspect that because Hydaelyn didn't, there were good reasons. Even if that were just, if she does that, she then can't hold the line for everybody else. You know, because she can't do everything all at once because she's, you know, constantly tapping herself out. Literally why it's called tempering. Yeah, temper people with element, forming them. Yeah, I mean, you're tempering their soul to the form that you want, right? And then eventually tempering their physical form to the form that you want as you temper them over and over again. Any chances of saving or reason for going to the void? Yeah, so definitely the salvation of the void is absolutely possible, asterisk. Play Eden if you want like the baseline understanding of like how umbrality and astrality could be reverted. The problem is that the entire world's been subsumed, so the lengths to which what it would require to do, and there's not a tool like Eden around, so could it be done? Maybe. How? We don't, there's small amount of precedent. But we also know Anukul High is looking to find information for that. If you talk to him over in the first, he'll tell you that he's looking into, that is like, after finding out about Eden, he's like, I'm going to try to see if I can help save the 13th. So it's possible. Do you think we're ever going to get a more story lore on the elementals from Gridania themselves? I don't know that we'll get much more story, if only because I feel like the vast majority of what needs to be explained about them has already been explained between 2.0, 6.0 role quests, and like the bits we get in the MSQ between. I mean, there's some 1.0 lore, but like all that stuff has been slightly retconned too. I mean, not retconned, but just like softened. I don't know how much more there is to explore on the elementals in specific, other than instead exploring Gridania and the Seedseer Council and those people in general and their relationship to it. Because there's not, like, they're elementals. They're the ethereal will of the forest made manifest, and, like, that's what they are, you know? And everything that we've learned about them from them, like, White Mage Quest and all that stuff, is kind of gives you everything you need to know, you know? The talk of who's more powerful makes me want to see an art piece of Renee, Hildebrand, and Nanamo arguing over whose dad could beat up another. I'm just doing it for fun, so it doesn't have to be concrete. Okay, I mean, like, yeah, feel free to speculate. I just, like, I don't know. I have good answers for you. On the history of 14, do you believe the first warrior of light existed as a person before the Ascian's machinations? Well, 5.3, you know, 5.2 and 5.3 would have things to say and implications around that, around whether or not the idea of the Warrior of Light was also something seeded by certain characters. I think it also depends if you mean Hydaelyn's chosen or if you mean people trying to save the world and do good. Because I definitely believe the latter. The former, Patrick's voice, yeah. What if we took the light from the first and pushed it to the 13th? Yeah, the problem is how do you do that? So the thing is that if you created void tears, the thing is that void tears kind of rely on astrality, so to put a lot of umbral aether through that and a meaningful amount of like world scale umbral aether, like the amount of what it would take to maintain a portal and get the aether through that portal just doesn't seem meaningfully feasible. And you couldn't rejoin them, because you would kill both parties, and because reflections don't rejoin into each other, they rejoin into the source. They're drawn to the source. Read the question wrong. Oops. No, all good. Do we know who the 12 are yet? Yes. Go read the shorts. Well, actually, no. Hey, Bean, can you post the short story of not Friends Gathered? It should be the one with Vana and the Watcher on the cover. Watch that. Replay 5.2 and 5.3. Play 6.0 in general touches on a lot of this, and then do Myths of the Realm. Also, do all the side quests in Elpis, as you will meet the progenitors of Althik and Nymea. You'll meet the brother and sister. Who are those people? As for the other characters, some of who they could be speculated upon, but some of it's ambiguous. There is the only example of something that's deeply concrete, as far as I can think of, is Nymea and Althik. Beyond that, the others, but they're basically, you know, Hydaelyn's Convocation. I believe a few streams ago I came up with some vague idea of using white Aurosite to contain light and then toss into the void like a flashbang. I mean, that's an idea, but you would need a fucking honkin' ass Aurosite to make that any, like, because like otherwise you're just like puff of smoking, right? If you just took a normal Aurosite, you'd have to infuse, like, if the Warrior of Light with all the Aether of the Light Wardens went into the 13th and released all that Light Aether, even that I don't know would even be nearly close to, like, even starting to be enough. So it's like, here's the other problem. If you release that amount of Aether into the source, into the 13th, you aren't just, it's not there's 50% Umbral, 50% Astral. You're releasing more Aether. You're taking Aether out of the first. Because Umbral Aether is still Aether, but you're taking that Aether of the first and putting it into the 13th, which means that this first will start to, like, die. You could make the first like the burn if you take too much energy away. Because the empty is, all the Aether is there, but it's so astrally aligned that it doesn't move. The burn is devoid of Aether, and you wouldn't want that to happen. I mean the dragon. Sorry, what dragon? Chances of saving are reasons for going to the void. Do you mean, are you talking about Hydaelyn? Is that what you mean? Tales of Record. Thank you, Bean. The 12 can fiddle a mean beat. Ain't that the truth? What would happen if the Warrior of Light rejoins the 13th shard? It would kill everyone on them, and it would kill a lot of people on the source. You know, the 7th Umbral Calamity? Basically that. And it would kill everyone on the 13th as well. We would likely be 10/14ths rejoined. I mean, yeah. I mean, presumably. Let's release a large amount of Aether in the 13th at the same time again. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah. Because it's, remember, Umbral and Astral is not a it is a polarity of Aether. So if you took 100% of Umbral and 100% of Astral, you don't make equal. You get equal, but at 200%. Which matters, because you take Aether from one place, you're draining that of its life essence. Even though the empty was devoid of movement, if you start draining Aether from the empty, you make it into the burn. You start making it into the burn, and that's going to affect the parts of the first that do still continue to exist, and those places that have been started to be reclaimed. I mean, what would happen if the Warrior of Light fuses with the 13th Reflection and Arbor stuff? I mean, we don't know. I mean, the thing is that it's not linear, right? Like, rejoining of souls is not a linear function. So for instance, our soul is more dense, which allows it to be stronger, but it didn't just mean that we just straight got more powerful, right? So I tend to think of it more as the rejoinings allow for a higher upper limit of capacity of ethereal accrual and manipulation, but it's not just a buff in and of itself, right? Your ceiling might have gone up a little bit, but it, yeah. Suggested dropping the 13th moon on the 13th. Except for Zodiark's Aether is Astral, assuming that he's even in there, and I don't know that that would solve the problem. Because then you're just causing chaos and astrality to attack chaos and astrality, right? You're not tuning the Aether a different direction. Because the problem is not that we need to, like, is that you need to realign astrality, right? Think about Eden. Think about, it wasn't just that we had to go, oh, we're going to flip Umbral to like Astral, and now it's better. We had to realign each of the poles and then get it to where it needed to be. It was much more fine-tuned than that. What happens if it's all rejoined? You would get the world you would return to the world unsundered. And all I will say is, Cthulhu, play Shadowbringers, because every single question you have asked is going to be answered for you in Shadowbringers. It will, like, definitively answer it for you. You fuse with your reflection, your mana bar gets another digit, your limit break feels noticeably slower. Hey! I love the addition at the end, because you're right? The more that you would rejoin yourself, the more that, like, you would be closer to being unlike your fellow Entelekis. Yeah. It's a really, really good point. But yeah. Any final question? I mean, like, does anyone have any, like, metaphysics or Endwalker questions or burning things? I know my favorite thing is, like, sometimes something in the story you could be like, oh man, why did they do that? Why didn't they answer this? And sometimes they did, or sometimes they have, like, good reasons. And I know helping out to explain those can be a lot of fun. Or at least it's fun for me. I don't know. I like making it so that running umbrages and frustrations are like, oh no, okay, that's fair. I get that. That makes sense, when it can be. Sometimes, sometimes it just doesn't work. But if not, also, I'm interested, how many times can I, like, search head nod? No, okay. I was curious. I have all the text of the entire game right here, and I was curious if I could, like, type it, see how many times we nod in game. Is Athena from Pandemonium an outlier for Ancient Society? I think the lesson we're supposed to take away from Pandemonium in general and Athena is that outlier, yes. Singular example, no. That that Ancient Society is not perfect, and think about people like Hermes, think about people like Athena, people like Erechthonios and his struggles. Like, clearly it's not, everything is not perfect paradise, right? But also that the vast majority of people were philosophically devoted to the good of the star and to doing all that they could for that. But within that band, there were people that struggled. Are localized rejoinings possible in that vein? Was the 7th rejoining a localized rejoining? I'm not sure what you mean by localized. Like, do you mean... Because, like, the 7th reflection was absorbed into the source. But the reason... And there was ethereal fuckery everywhere. But the reason it was particularly bad in Eorzea was because that's where Bahamut was released over, and where the vast majority of the energy was released in. The same way that the 4th Umbral Calamity was an earthquake that started out from the Crystal Tower, because the Crystal Tower was the source point for the Earth to crack and crumble, right? Even though it affected the whole world. The starting point was from Eorzea. So, like, the rejoinings happen globally. They don't happen locally. The calamities can start out more localized, but they tend to spread out. Like, so we know that the 5th and 6th, for instance, affected the whole world, the frost and the flood, right? We know that, well, we don't know much about 1 through 3. We know that 1 was wind, 2 was lightning, and 3 was fire, but we don't know much about how they affected the world. Pagel race playable? Probably not. I mean, I think the thing is like from a lore standpoint, no, for a lot of reasons. Part to do with that you would have to be a child, or at least be effectively stuck with the aesthetics of a child, which is problem from like an animation standpoint, problem from an armor standpoint, problem from a legal Square Enix standpoint, from people not taking people taking advantage of that in bad ways. So I doubt it. What you could see is like Pagel headdresses or something. Like imagine like an event in Gridania, like a seasonal event, like an Easter event where everybody's dressing up as Pagel or something. I mean, that seems kind of insensitive, but I don't know. Maybe it's maybe. It was not worldwide, so it was worldwide, but only Eorzean got the bad stuff. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, So 7th was very localized to Eorzea because it was rooted in Bahamut and what Bahamut was doing, and his blasts of astrality. But other calamities have been much more spread out. I wish they'd forget the existing cast of characters and introduce some new ones in 7.0. Well, I mean, there are introducing new ones bit by bit, but I think look, I really want more, new characters. They're making Krile more important, but I way prefer them transitioning. I don't want, hey, out old in new. I like the fact that we're kind of seeing some of the older people kind of like fade into the background a little bit and newer characters take more center stage, because it feels like a passing of the baton over time, and that just feels much more natural and like like real world. There's something about that I really, harkens onto me. But don't get me wrong, I do want more new characters, and I think, between 0 and like the taking of older characters who have been around but giving them more time and like actually get to be more characters like Krile, and remember certain characters have only been around in our party for one expansion at this point, like a certain red-haired Mikote. But yeah. If the duty was to serve the star, what does it mean for the Athena ones? I mean, Athena was... We don't know exactly, but Athena was selfish, but also the idea of Athena is someone who's invested in the idea of, can you, not should you, right? Like that. I mean, that's just to be simplified. It's literally crystal, yet it survived earthquake. That's some sturdy crystals for you. Yeah. Well, it is a tough cookie. Are you saying that Sid's dad bringing Dalamud down was to put the idea into his mind from the 7th rejoining? Well, no, the 7th had rejoined. So what happened there is Sid's dad contacted Dalamud with a lunar transmitter because of how Darnus had it. And then Bahamut tempered him. And Bahamut wanted to be free. Bahamut was doing Bahamut's own thing. The Ascians took advantage of that so that when Dalamud broke and orchestrated things to be pushed towards there, and Emmett 100%, Solus Galvus 100% was trying to get this to happen, too. So like this was machinations on the part of the Ascians, but so that it was setting up a cataclysmic event so that they could kick off the rejoining at the right time. And then, so when Bahamut broke free, that started the calamity, that it broke the wall, that allowed for the rejoining of Aether from the 7th shard. So I'm not sure I follow what the confusion on that is. Bring Dalamud was put into his idea from the 7th rejoining. No. Yeah, because the order of operations here is Solus helps take advantage of Allagan tech. Solus helps set up getting Bahamut into the sky in the first place, because he's part of Allag. Solus helps set up Allag to be what it is. Bahamut gets trapped in Dalamud. 5,000 years later, he sets up the situation where I'm sorry, Garland. I'm forgetting Sid's father's name, but where Papa Garland gets the lunar transmitter, contacts the moon, and becomes tempered by Bahamut. Then, and also, Nail Van Darns gets tempered by Bahamut. The events of 1.0 happen and are all orchestrated towards the bringing down of Dalamud as a way to cause the 7th Umbral Calamity. And that's known that that's what's going to be going down by Solus. And then they kick off their rejoining whatever they did on the 7th to cause it to fall right at the same time that Dalamud, like the events around Dalamud, it breaking apart in Bahamut happened, which then allowed the Aether, instead of just to become like the 13th, flooded into the source, which also fueled the Bahamut and everything that happened to be even worse than it should have been. Fake horns feel like an insult to the real blessed Pagel. Yeah, I would agree, but it wouldn't be the first time they've done something like that, right? So I just saying, like, I mean, I wouldn't, but it wouldn't be that weird, especially if like you root it in the Pagel making it a celebration of like their kind or something. Speaking of old, we have met some nice elder folks in Endwalker. Yeah, the main Scions have had a rough few subjective years. They deserve a break, definitely. I'm definitely in favor of. Think about like Stola's story, right? And like if she does find a way to create a portal between reflections, she can go live with Runar. So that could be a good, nice end to that. I love Thancred. I love Eorzean. I'm perfectly happy to have them step back in their roles, right, and be like less and less a part of things, and pass that baton on. But it takes time because you also want to make sure that you have at least 7 people in your group, partially if they want to do anything with trials, right? So they have to be careful about how they do it, you know. So total Jurassic Park hubris with Athena, pretty much. I think the difference being Yukio is that Athena knows it going wrong is part of Athena's plan. So that I guess the asterisk there would not be that. It's not that Athena didn't predict anything that would how things would go down. She just doesn't care. Are humans the dittos of hybrid races? For example, are Mikote already children theoretically possible? Yeah, so, hey, Kev, Bean, are you here? Could you pass Kevin the video I have on procreation between races? Because while, yes, dittos are possible, we are kind of the human, we are kind of the dittos. Now I understand the point. There's no theoretical reason why it shouldn't be possible between other groups. However, we don't have specific examples that I can think of. I mean, I guess well, no, because it's still human. Yeah, I don't have a good example beyond that. Metis and Ungarland. Thank you, AC. Yeah, Metis. But yeah. What time is it? Holy moly, we've been going for quite a bit here. This became a lore question answering stream. I guess, who's excited for also the, I mean, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, but who else is excited for the Final Fantasy 16 stream tomorrow with, Koji and crew? I know I am. I'd be okay hanging out with the B-Science, just not a particular archer who loves Ro. Oh, Nor Cockburn. But yeah, I definitely, I mean, they gave Hori Boulder a voice in Endwalker, right? So, you know, maybe there's possibility of Hori becoming more of an important character. I mean, hell, maybe Sicard and Emmanuelane could become characters for the New World or something. I like Sicard. I would like him to be around more. It really was a Q&A panel with the Elio. Yeah. Depends if you could Garlean crossmating as human. Well, but that's the thing is that if a Garlean crossmates with a Hure, then we're still the Ditto, right? Whereas, like, I don't know of any examples off the top of my head of any Ro Garlean pairings or any other combo. So, like, because of that, the point still about it being a Ditto thing becomes ambiguous. But yeah, we did a video a while ago that it was about interspecies romance in 14 and, like, the actualities of it. I'm very excited for the mainline FF games. Yeah, me too, Samuel. Especially after 15 in one of the 3 people who liked, and I'm one of the 3 people. And yeah, Samuel, we've talked about 15 a lot on here. I think 15 is deeply flawed in terms of, like, it's missing too many sections of import in its narrative and a number of other things that are understandable from the development hell it went through, but its highs are really high. Like, while I have problems with it, its highs are really high, and I'm very excited for 16 because I expect 16 to be all the things I love. Not in that specificity, but the quality of the highs of 15 most of the way throughout, because this team's really good at being consistent in terms of their full execution, telling a full story. Why are Aura fake dragons? They are not. They exist on the first, which should tell you that they are not related to dragons in any way, shape, or form, because the dragons are not native to Hydaelyn, to Atheris. They came from a different star, and they didn't come until after the Sundering, which means that Auras had the thing though is that they're just, I mean, it's the same way you could ask, like, why are Mikote or Hrothgar fake lions, right? It's like, well, they're not really, but you know. Is it Arvald a Ro Garlean kid? No, Arvald is a Highlander Hure Garlean kid. Yeah. Can citizens of the source procreate with void sense? They're all sterile. All the void scent would be sterile. Because there's no creation in the void. Everything is either consumed. So, like, in the void, all that happens is you are either eaten by someone else or you survive long enough to eat others. There isn't any creation, like procreation on the 13th. Some void scent can be procreated in terms of, like, on the source, like bombs can be farmed. Or slimes and things can form from, actually I think slimes technically are ashkin, but like hectides can be formed and stuff. But no, I there wouldn't be any procreation between them, I wouldn't think. Especially just like, it would be kind of like sticking your dick in an electrical plug. So, look, you might be into it. I don't know how well it's going to work. The whole nothing dies, nothing being born thing. Yeah, exactly. We should also, I mean, like, if you want to, you know, I talk about this in the Crimson lyrical lore, Forged in Crimson, which is Rubicante's theme, and which talks a lot about what the world, like, the despair of what the 13th is like. If you haven't watched that, Bean, if you could, it could pass that along. No wonder they're so cross. You heard me, Raven. You heard me. What will happen to the anti-outsider faction of the forum? I mean, they kind of already lost that fight, but like they'll probably be still people with stick up their asses. But I think they've severely lost that fight, right? So your people like Silvestri are kind of like, you know, they're just kind of screwed in terms of their machinations. Oh, good, Infinite. So yeah, I would just say that, like, yeah. Here, I just want to pull up something real quick. It is so weird. I have not streamed without some kind of sound or music in like in like the past. It's very strange. I think that's interesting that most Void Sen have clear personality consciousness, whereas most Sin Eaters don't. Yeah, and I think that's an aspect of umbrality and astrality for sure. Because like the astrality quickens their greed, their lust, their sense of jealousies, and on all those, like, the worst parts of yourself. Whereas you are cleansed of emotion when you become a Sin Eater, right? You are cleansed of personality and disposition. Your sins are eaten, and the sins of others are eaten. So it is. I think it's telling. I also point out that the level to which some Void Sent kept their personalities is also varies. Like, those on the lower rung seem to have much less, like, cognition. By the same token, it seems like higher, you know, certain light wardens have more or less, as it were. But, well, some of them are in weird places. I would also point out, in terms of how a certain weird light warden was born, the final one we fight, pay attention that Zero is kind of the antithesis to that, in the exact same thing that happens, but with darkness instead. And that's worth remembering. In the darkness be by fear consumed. God, I had that line stuck in my head after having to edit those lines so good. Hearts turn cold when naught ever blooms. Oh. I remember the first time I realized that Forged in Crimson actually had lyrics, not just random Latin chanting. I don't know if you guys know this, but the music in Final Fantasy XIV is pretty good. It's pretty good. But I gotta go replay 9 like off stream or something, because that nod from Yoshi-P today about 2 and 9. Let's theorize. Okay, what elements from 2 could they take over? Right? I mean, like, honestly, the main thing is the Emperor. I mean, there's Pandemonium, right? Like, there's like they've already taken that. Like, if 2 is relevant for that, I mean, maybe they could do the Emperor for like Athena for Pandemonium Part 3 or something. Like, maybe that's what he was getting at. But then, like, what from 9? I'll have to ask Naniri. How much did Nidhogg love his sister? You know, Ratatoskr? Quite a lot. I mean, enough that, like, her loss and the betrayal by everyone for them was enough to not only propagate his rage to the degree which he would, you know, perpetuate 1,000 years of sadism, but he, like, clearly he loved Ratatoskr and could not handle the loss of her, you know, and it broke him. Surprised people know the lyrics. I can never make out the lyrics to sing. I swear, every time I log into Endwalker, I just hear, "Been so long since I have played." Yeah. Red Mage, if you don't know, I do a series called Lyrical Lore. I've done one for Flow, for Answers, for Close in the Distance, for, you know, for a bunch of different of the songs, you know, going over them. And I will say that, you know, talking about the lyrics and what they mean, while also, like, creating an edited video with the lyrics and having to, like, write out all the lyrics, took me a long way towards knowing all of them. You know, it did To the Edge, too. Yeah. For some reason, I rewatched Heaven's Word. I cannot help but pity Nidhogg. Oh, yeah! You should absolutely pity Nidhogg. There's no question you should pity Nidhogg. But you also can't, you should pity Emet-Selch. You should have compassion for them. But you also can't let them continue doing what they're doing. You can't also let their rage or need to have what they want come at the cost of everybody else's, you know, life and joy. Nidhogg loved her so much he got her indirectly killed, a la shooting the messenger. got her with Ratatoskr? I'm not sure. Did Nidhogg kill someone who was going to warn about? I'm not sure what you mean, AC, but arcane entities can be sentient. Yeah, souls aren't necessarily tied with sentience, 100%. But to do all living beings have souls and arcane entities do not? Are there exceptions, overlaps? So, it's complicated. So for instance, Alpha is a good example. The implication by the end of Omega's quest line is that Alpha has a soul. However, the implication at the beginning is that Alpha does not have a soul, which means that things could potentially form them, right? Or can be ensouled. Living beings have souls that seem to return to the life stream as implied by Hermes and other characters, which would mean that I think you would say most beastkin would. But it's ambiguous. Things like soulkin, forgekin, I mean, ironically, soulkin, forgekin, don't necessarily. Ashkin, it depends, because sometimes Ashkin can be an inanimate being that's lost its soul, but then it's possessed by a soul that refused to die. So Ashkin are weird. Elementals are effectively are without souls. And I also play the Anima questline, right? The Anima a relic. The Heavensward Relic questline talks a lot about what a soul is and what it takes to form one and what it constitutes and what sentience is. Because like an anima is like a literally soul, manufactured soul. And you look at that and that tells you that the soul may not be the only heart of cognition, but there is something about it that is important, right? And, for us, it's the means by which our, memory beyond space and time is stored, aspects of self, it is, it's more like Ka and Ha, almost. And it's not just the soul is the self. There's more to it than that. But by the same token, you have when the Scions have their souls removed and are on the first. And, then they're just corporeal flesh. So is the soul most of self? Because in that case, it seems more like yes. And so it's ambiguous throughout. And I think aetherological study kind of conveys that, like, because of how incorporeal and corporeal aether are weird, it gets weird, Good to know, yeah. The Lyrical Lore videos are very good. Thank you, Meowza. Good to see, glad to have you, by the way. I also love the raw strength on a level mere mortals cannot contest line. Yeah. I hate Thoradin, but I feel pity for Nidhogg. Yeah, see, I don't feel pity for Thoradin, because Thoradin knows exactly what he's doing, had nothing in specific done. Like, the thing is if Thoradin's goal was to become a god to protect his nation because he could not see any other way for things to end, and it was the only hope and he was desperate, that would be one thing. But that's not the implication with Thoradin. The implication with Thoradin pretty solidly is that he's egotistical and just wants power and is willing to play everybody else against each other to get that power. And while he may claim sometimes because I'll use that to be a benevolent ruler for Ishgard, it's all kind of bullshit, right? Ultimately. Elemental fury, given flesh raw strength on level. Yeah, embodiments of earth, wind, fire. Yeah, it's good lines, AC. I oddly see a similarity between Emma and Niddy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they both remember their loved ones, but one is perpetually reliving their loved one's death over and over and over again. Yeah, well, one is driven to the hope to be able to see them again, right? But definitely, I think if you can have compassion and pity for, Emmett, you should be able to for Niddy and vice versa. I even have some pity for Xenos. If you've never read his short story or, looked into his background, Xenos was forged. Xenos knows what he's doing, and I don't have, I don't condone and I don't have a lot of compassion necessarily for him, but I do have a lot of pity, because Xenos was not born, Xenos was forged. Into how he is. Nidhogg's contempt for man led to Ratatoskr delivering the message to Thoradin, who in turn killed her because of said message. Okay. I see what you see. Well, he didn't kill her, he put her in a position to be killed. I guess, but that seems also not victim blaming, because he's that's still all on Thoradin, right? That's none of that's on Nidhogg. Nidhogg having some amount of contempt and going along with his siblings, but being frustrated, but being fine. And then Ratatoskr trying to make things better and Thoradin taking advantage of it, I mean, but also Nidhogg did have his own. Yeah, I see your point. I do. Any chance Archbishop Thoradin tempered himself somewhat? Yes, but also I don't know how much that would have changed anything about his actions, right? Because he only just seems to let the guys go, let the guys of what he actually wanted go, and any of the veil of pretensions go into like just what actually he wanted and what he was, more so than it was like, oh, someone trying to do good then became then became the primal and then became a monster, right? You know, Xenos never really had a chance. For that, I have some pity for him. Yeah, and like again, you can pity without condoning. Like that's a really important distinction. I think the game goes to great lengths to teach it, to like say that as a message, that you can have compassion and pity people without condoning their actions and while standing in their way. Yeah, I still changed it. He just lets the mask slip. He basically showed us his full ego. That is it. Yeah. I don't think it really... I think if you had a version of Thoradin where he was very relatively sympathetic up to that point, then all of a sudden he gets it. He gets the power and becomes a primal. And like becomes like more like egotistical and all that. Then it could be tragic. But that's not what we get, you know? The more I replay the story and read the side materials, the more I grow to appreciate Xenos. Yeah. I think that's the thing about Xenos is like... The more context you have for Garlemald, the more context you have for Xenos, the more context you have for Varus, the more context you have for the world, for Emmett and Solus Galvus and all those things, the more I think it's not that you need any of those anything that's outside context to make Xenos like a good character, in my opinion, because I thought so beforehand, or to like make him make sense. But it fills in blanks that definitely deepen and like my appreciation for the classical tragedy of him. Not a good person gone wrong, but you know, it's very similar to oh my god, Fat Baby Man, Valkyrie. You know, Valkyrie never had a chance. Valkyrie was born into a world where he was what he was, in the world he was born into, and raised the way he was. It doesn't mean I don't hate him. Doesn't mean I don't I condone him. Doesn't mean I'm like, oh, you know, like, oh, you know, no. But I have deep and utter pity because it's tragic because there wasn't a chance. There was no chance he was going to probably turn out good. Or at least if there was, you know, it's not reasonable to assume he would have. You know, not that we're purely byproducts of our environments, but you know, when you have all those things going against you. With how cold Varus is, I'm not surprised he became that. Look how much joy Xenos had when he killed Varus, yeah. I still think transformation to primal locks your mind in a mindset you believe in, both with Thoradin and the boss of 5.x trial. Yeah. Well, the boss of the 5.x trial wouldn't be tempered though, too, right? Because that boss is has an echo, has the soul of an ancient. So they would be fine. But I think the principle in general, yeah. He really just called Thval 3 Fat Baby Man. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? I am not wrong. But also, yes. How do you feel about the Garlean mentality? I mean, it's fascism. You know, the weapon questline made me hate the Garleans even more, but the events of Edward changed my opinion. I guess, like, the events of Endwalker didn't change my opinion at all, because, like, that's exactly my understanding. I mean, like, I guess the thing is that Garleans are a pretty good representation of, like, what those populaces are like in history. You know? Like, the weapons questline made me hate, Valens. You know, it made me hate the Garlean machine, but I already hated the atrocities committed by the Garlean machine, the Garlean ethos of their empire, of all those things. Like, I had a hatred for those, but that's different than hating a populace and hating a people, right? And so, like, Endwalker, what I appreciate about Endwalker was it was the thing that conveyed all the context, not about not about defending their actions, but about where they're coming from. And also, if you knew about being kicked out of Locus Amenos, if you knew the background, their history, and the chip on the shoulder they had, what happened to them, especially with the machinations of someone like Emmett Selk and Solus Galvus, isn't surprising. You know, you make desperate people. If you put desperate people in the corner, bad things happen. And it's not that we should accept that or condone that as inevitable, but, like, it's not surprising. And so then I really appreciate the Garlemald section of Endwalker, because it does such a good job of not just humanizing bad guys, but conveying a deep sense of nuanced context that makes people not just two-dimensional villains. You know, yeah. Which is more tragic, Xenos being the way he is, or that he was denied a character at living like a person instead of a weapon or tool? But I guess, AC, those are the same thing to me. Xenos is the way he is because he was denied a chance at living like a person instead of a weapon or tool. You know? Like, so, like, those are... You can't untie those from each other. 14 is really good at setting up tragic characters in the classical way. Yeah. And then having a breadth of them, too. Definitely. Weapons Questline gave us a nice Ultima remix. Yeah. Beat the hardest to beat. The hardest to beat. It's just showing the difference between their government and their people. Yeah. Well, and also, and not just the difference between the government and the people, but also the ethos. You know, speaking of, if you haven't watched our Endwalker series, me and Neri talk about and go through the entirety of Endwalker and talk about like stuff like this. So if you have any interest, definitely go check that out. But like about why their ethos formed, why it continues to perpetuate, and why people are fighting for something that they actually loved, not just against something they hated. And also the lengths to which like things like the Reaper questline and other questline go to a great lengths to show that the unawareness of the populace about what's happening outside of their borders, which doesn't make them innocent of or you know, take away any responsibility for them to should have known, but it like that context matters, right? Like when the Reapers, like some of the Lemire go to Corvos for the first time post it being taken over Locus Amenos, and they're like, oh, we're the baddies, fuck, you know. Is it possible for Xenos to appear in front of us in the ethereal sea for Pandemonium since his will is so strong? I would say no, based on the fact of the location and where he passed, and also that his aether, I don't know that his aether would necessarily return to the ethereal sea, and I think that if it did, it would be spent, and his soul would be, the aether would return, but his soul would not, like the soul would be broken immediately into the ethereal sea. That would be my speculation. I don't think you'll ever see Xenos again, but I'm someone pitching my idea here based on the evidence at hand that and my feeling on it. So don't take that as any kind of word of law. Should someone tell Fortunal about what happened to Louis Soir? Should, yes, but remember that the twins promised not to tell anyone about what happened to Phoenix. So maybe one day they did, or maybe they did off screen, but they may also be keeping their final promise to their grandfather to keep that knowledge of what happened in the coils a secret. So can't believe I got spoiled on going to Garland by a stupid weather report. Oh my god, that sucks. Sorry, Infinite. At least that was one of the things that was like being given, like was in all the marketing material and stuff. So it wasn't like, if you had just been paying attention to some of the stuff that, you know, trailers and things, unless you were going full blind, that was, you know, that was in the job action trailer, that was in a lot of places. So I mean, that may not make you feel any better, but at least it wasn't like something that was hidden, particularly in the lead up. Xenos burned through the aether of his soul, so it cannot come back as Xenos. Well, it depends on how much you want to say burning through the aether of his soul is poetic versus literal, right? So while I agree with you, AC, there could be some more poetry in that than maybe was seen as literal, because, you know, even if the aether is burned, is it expended truly, or is it just dissipated? Because aether can either be truly created or destroyed, except for when drowned out by another force, like Akasha. Have a good one, Samuel. Thanks. Yeah, glad to help. I don't know if anyone noticed on Ensinger EX it showed what I think is Aether fighting Dynamis and Dome. Yeah. The pushback of the like light and darkness thing pushing back. I don't think that's Aether fighting against Dynamis, because in that moment you're using Dynamis as part of like the final push, and it's the belief and the prayers and the emotions of everyone that are holding the line. I see that more as the Dynamis of hope versus the Dynamis of despair. That is because of like what the Ensinger represents and what we are representing in that moment. That would be my pitch as opposed to Aether. But it is a really beautiful touch. Still, my friend being spoiled on Exarch Identity by photo figure in a launcher, though. Yeah, that's Infinite. That's a struggle. And I've come across a lot of people who are like, feel that it shouldn't matter, and I've come across people who like feel like it super should. Yeah. Have a good one, Raven. Okay, point is the game went through lengths to show on screen Xenos died again. Yeah. But yeah, I think we'll actually start wrapping up here because it's been a couple hours. But let's wrap it up here. Bean, if you have any things the things you want to post, don't forget you can join our Discord if you want to talk about more things like this with me or other people. You can also talk about General 14 and stuff as well in the general. If you want to play 14 with us, like we do all sorts of like maps, PvP, you know, alliance raids, any number of things together on the reg. Feel free to come join there. Beyond that, we stream on Monday and Tuesday where you've been going through the MSQ. We just finished up Shadowbringers. We're heading into the 5.x series. On Thursday, we stream the mainline Final Fantasy games. We do Final Fantasy 3. On Wednesdays, new videos come out. And on Friday, we sometimes hold book club. So if you like talking about lore, that's a great place to do that. Saturdays, we also have community events. So yeah. It's been 3 hours, Elio. Jesus. Okay. Yeah, we should definitely call it there. So yeah, thank you so much for joining, and to all the new faces, thank you for chatting. It was a really good time. Hope you all have a wonderful time. And with that, I've been Elliot Forster-Wrong, and I